speak into the mic, so
Is that better?
it's up to these guys.
Can you folks hear me? It should be on.
Just pull it closer.
The March submission
There you go.
was a 2-page document, including the lighting for the 100,000 square foot warehouse on the Myers property. This was a 7-page submission that has details as to manufacturer specs, et cetera, particularly on the last page. And that's with a cursory review. We got this at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Mr. Schutte asked me at the end of the last hearing when he was going to have Mr. Naun's report. And I said to him I'd have it by the end of the day, Tuesday, November 7th. That's what I did. You gave us a deadline in advance of the last hearing of 45 days to submit any information that the applicant was going to have us consider, or have the board consider at the last hearing. So this is not a second attempt at it, it's a third attempt. And quite frankly, the applicant's own witness said, we were going to address the other details during land development. I can find the page in the transcript. I'm sure Ms. Myers could find it for us, but that was the nature of the testimony. He said, we're going to do that at land development, and I specifically said, is there a different set of criteria for a land development lighting plan than a special exception lighting plan? And that's a specific criteria of this ordinance for this use.
And with this piece of evidence, we're meeting that criteria on the record.
But rebuttal is not the time to make your case in chief, and there's adequate case authority for that, which it's not about the rules of evidence. It's about meeting your burden in the time that's allotted to do it, not to clean up your mistakes, which was done with a truck movement plan. It was done with additional screening when the Myers property was still in place. All of those things that are brought in, we're supposed to look at applications in special exception and conditional use at the time the application is filed, not fix it as we go. That's the problem.
I disagree. The criteria for a special exception is made in the record of the hearing before the board, not in the application submission. And the record before the board is now being provided to you so that you can make an informed decision on meeting the criteria of the ordinance.
Is the concern by the township and the objectors that your team did not have sufficient amount of time to analyze it since you just got it this afternoon?
So to speak on behalf of the township, that's part of it, yes. Part of the ordinance is that, as Attorney Schutte said, it has, the special exception application, the lighting plan with it has to meet the township ordinance. At this point, the township hasn't had an opportunity to review it, to determine that. And I think at a very basic practical level, I'm sitting here wondering who am I going to question? You know, Attorney Schutte can't say that. He can, but who am I supposed to ask questions about, and how am I supposed to ask those questions when I saw this really at 4 o'clock, quite frankly. I know it came at 2.
So I'm just trying to figure out a resolution for this. Would it be appropriate, or would you guys be okay with us giving you additional time to review the lighting plan and leaving that open for a future hearing for a discussion on it, so that you could have some chance to get your own lighting experts? Or
Attorney Bransky, may I speak, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Exhibit 33, Attorney Schutte, that was your lighting plan at the last hearing?
I'm not a witness.
Just asking for clarification.
In August, we were provided Exhibit 33.
Yeah, if we're not cross-examining the attorneys.
It's a lighting plan.
You're just asking him, right?
Mr.
Well, hold on.
I
Hold on.
just wanted to clarify.
Is there 33 in the packet? Is it the lighting plan?
Yes.
All right, so yes, it is the lighting plan.
Thank you. On page 52 of the transcript from the last hearing, Attorney Schutte asked his witness about this specific document. Question: does this exhibit meet the standards required under Chapter 89 of the Hamilton Township Code of Ordinances, which is the township's lighting ordinance? The witness's answer: yes, I believe so. On cross-examination, Attorney Wolf identified, and the witness admitted, there was a number of deficiencies that failed to meet the standards in Chapter 89. the applicant rested their case in chief. We now have a new exhibit which purports to, well, I don't know what it purports to do. My belief, based on a quick review of 7 pages, whereas the original document, Exhibit 9, was only 2 pages, and I believe 33 is only 2 pages. So whatever constitutes the additional pages is what we call new evidence. New evidence is never appropriate during a rebuttal case. Rebuttal cases are for rebuttal. This is not rebuttal. This is new evidence, and the board should reject the exhibit. It's not a question of needing time to review. It should be rejected tonight.
I believe that you did rest, Mr. Schutte.
That is correct.
And there has to be a cutoff
Yes.
for each side when you can continue to move your case forward with witnesses and exhibits.
I
Your-
agree.
Hold on, let me finish. I believe your cutoff was last week where you did rest. We gave you opportunity to put your witnesses on additional exhibits. So based on that, I am inclined to say that we're not going to admit any more exhibits from the applicant. That's it. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Wolf?
Prepared to proceed with Mr. Nahn.
Really?
All right. Slide.
I do.
All right, sir. Can you state your name for the record, spell your last name, and give us your professional address, please?
Certainly. My name is John. Last name's Nawn, N-A-W-N. My professional address is P.O. Box 527, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, 19073.
Okay. I'm going to hit some basics of your education and your credentials. My understanding is that there will be a stipulation as to Mr. Nahn's offer as an expert in traffic planning, design, and engineering. Having said that, I just want to have a little bit of information on the record. I'm looking at a document, Mr. Nahn, that is, I have handwritten on it 03, Objectors 3. It is a report that is dated November 4th, and it is the first 15 numbered pages, and then attached to it at the back is another 5 pages, the first of which says Curriculum Vitae of John Nahn. Did you prepare this report in Curriculum Vitae?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And is the document that I'm looking at a true and correct, the Curriculum Vitae portion, a true and correct summary of your engineering, your education, your experience, and your licensure as a professional engineer?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do you have a BS in civil engineering from Drexel?
I do.
And that was awarded in 1987?
Yes, sir.
And master's in civil engineering from the same university from 2012?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any other specialized education regarding, particularly regarding traffic in any form?
I have a certificate from the Northwestern Institute on accident reconstruction,
And that was awarded when?
2016, I believe.
2014?
I should look
Is that right?
at my exhibit here.
All right.
Put the mic closer to you.
Are you do you hold licensure with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in a professional capacity?
Yes, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania
And how long have you been licensed in the Commonwealth?
since 1992.
Okay, and are you licensed in other states?
Yes, I'm licensed in 8 other states.
Okay. Have you, in your background and experience, have you worked as a traffic engineer on behalf of municipalities?
I have.
Have you worked on behalf of developers?
Yes, I have.
And have you worked on behalf of objectors groups such as your role tonight?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and you've been retained by the objectors in this case to review the traffic impact study?
I have, yes.
And in the course of your,
Mr. Wolf, I need to interrupt you. Hold that thought. Emergency announcement. Whoever is the owner of a gray Kia Sportage license plate LFY 2306, you're blocking the fire truck and they need to leave now. So Or they're just going to move it with the truck? So get it out of the way. All right. Well, I gave him the warning. Go ahead, Nate, sorry.
Okay. All right. No problem. All right. So, have you been employed with the, sorry, I sort of lost where I was. In your experience, have you worked in preparing traffic impact studies?
Yes, I have.
Have you reviewed traffic impact studies on behalf of municipalities?
I have.
Have you presented traffic impact studies to municipalities for review?
Yes, I have.
And have you presented traffic impact studies to PennDOT for review?
I have, yes.
Are you familiar with the requirements for PennDOT's traffic impact studies?
Yes, I am.
And are you familiar with the municipality, Hamilton Township zoning ordinance, and the provisions in the subdivision land development ordinance related to traffic impact studies?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you have reviewed the application materials in this case and prepared your report?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'm offering Mr. Nawn as an expert in traffic engineering, planning, and design.
Any objections, Township
No, we're willing to stipulate to his expert credentials.
applicant?
Willing to stipulate.
Mr. Nan will be admitted as an expert.
All right.
Thank you.
I have previously distributed copies of this report. Again, I've identified the entire packet. I've marked it as 03. That's your reported November 4th. Okay, Mr. Nawn, can you provide us just a general idea of what you reviewed in preparation for writing this report from this case specifically?
Certainly. Reviewed the transportation impact study, I believe it's Exhibit A34. The trip generation information provided by the applicant, I believe that's A35. The applicant's lighting exhibit, A33. The sketch plan, I believe that was applicant's exhibit A32. The logistics center conceptual future improvement analysis, I believe that was referred to as exhibit A36. There was a TRG review letter dated October 22nd, which was A37, the transcript of the June 26th zoning hearing, and then two additional informations from the Adams County Office of Planning and Development, their agenda for their October 23rd meeting, and their staff presentation for October 23rd, 2024.
Those last two matters, do they relate to the regional traffic impact study that was discussed, that was being essentially spearheaded by Adams County's Office of Planning?
Yes, primarily at the intersection of SR 94 and SR 30.
Okay. Did you conduct a site visit to that
Yes,
location?
I was at that intersection and the property on April 19th, 2024.
And have you been familiar with that intersection?
For quite some time, yes, sir.
Okay. In addition to the information that you provided, did you also review the March 28, 2024 transcript from the first hearing in this matter?
Yes, sir.
And were you present for the June 25th and October 28th hearings in this matter?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so you're familiar with the testimony that was presented. Had you looked at the prior versions of the traffic impact study as well?
I did, sir, yes.
And did that include the supporting documentation, the full 800 and I believe it was 32 pages of that full submission, not just the exhibit, which was the executive summary that we identified, I believe, as Exhibit A34?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In reviewing those materials, can you walk us through your observations, your analysis, and we'll start with that trip generation. There's been much testimony about that. What did you review, and what conclusions have you drawn?
Certainly. The applicant is proposing a 621,000 square foot warehouse, and I believe the testimony said it was going to be somewhat less than 35 feet high, consistent with the ordinance, although no exact height was given. The township requires that the trip generations be based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, national standard when generating trips for all types of land uses, including warehouses. The 11th edition is the current edition of the manual. The applicant's transportation impact study did use that manual. Within that manual, there are a number of different land uses specifically for warehouses. Now, the ITE defines specifically a warehouse in excess of 200,000 square feet and 24 feet in height as a high cube warehouse. Those land use codes for high cube warehouse are not what the applicant used to generate the trips for this particular warehouse. He used land use code 150, which is for a generic warehouse, if that even exists nowadays in the logistics stream. There are other land uses codes that ITE publishes for high cube warehouses. 154, land use 155, which is the fulfillment center warehouse, either as a sort facility or a non-sort facility. Land use 156, which is referred to as a parcel hub, something that UPS or USPS or FedEx would use. 157 is a cold storage warehouse. So there are other uses that are specific to warehouses. What's interesting, difficult, confusing in this type of use is that, if you're generating trips for instance, a single-family residential development, a house, for instance, generates X number of trips. Doesn't matter who occupies the house, things like that. An office, like Office Park, land use 750, generates X number of trips. Doesn't matter who occupies the office, doesn't matter what the tenant is, they're all just office trips. You can't use a warehouse that way. Warehouses can be used for multiple different uses that have wildly different trip generation characteristics. So
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. The land use code 150, is that the oldest of the warehouse land use codes that exist in the ITE manual?
yes, it goes back to some of the original editions of the trip generation manual before we had this concept of high cube warehouses. Yes.
And these other varieties, the 154, the 155, 156, and 7, and the sort versus non-sort, have they developed over time?
Absolutely. As the logistics stream has developed, so have the various types of warehouse uses developed, yes.
And how does the ITE develop those additional, basically subsets of warehouse or distribution center?
Well, like all ITE land uses, they're based on actual counts, actual uses that exist. They go out there, they get count data, or they get count studies or traffic impact studies from other engineers that say, here's the trips that are associated with this type of land use. And that's the thing. There is no such thing as a generic warehouse. It has to be based on the actual use of the warehouse itself. What are you going to use the warehouse for? That's how you generate the trips.
So are there criteria, basically check boxes? We talked about the flow chart, and I'll jump ahead for a second. That was part of that strike-off letter. That is size of the building one of the criteria?
Absolutely.
Is the nature of the, or is building height a criteria?
Yes,
Is number of dock doors?
yes.
Is location and the, where the site is that a relevant characteristic to determine what the use, or how the use should be measured?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, having said that, in starting with 150, you've indicated that there are deviations between a 150 and what we have proposed here. Can you walk through that with us?
Sure. Again, a 150 warehouse is 200,000 square feet or less and 24-foot ceiling height or less. We have a 621,000 square foot warehouse and a height of somewhere less than 35 feet. There was no exact height given on that. Some other things about the warehouse itself. The typical functions, like for instance of a 150 warehouse, the products are stored on site typically for more than 1 month, so it's just general storage. That's honestly not how most warehouses are used nowadays. The products come in and they move out, and that's not anything that we've done. That's just the way the logistics streams moves things anymore. We demand our products quicker than that anymore. Nothing sits around. No one maintains inventory for a month anymore.
Are these characteristics found within your report?
Yes,
that
they are.
You've identified
I'm on
them?
page 5 of my report.
Okay,
And they're also from the ITE manual itself.
okay. So you've restated from the ITE manual what the relevant characteristics and distinguishing characteristics are?
Exactly, yes,
Okay,
sir.
go ahead, please, the 150.
You look at something like the location of a standard warehouse, it's typically within an industrial area in the urban or urban periphery.
Okay.
We're not, that's not where we are here. We're just not in that type of area. We're in a suburban neighborhood here. When you look at the number of docks associated with a standard warehouse, usually it's 1 per 20,000 square feet. We're at like 1 per 7 or 8,000 square feet with this particular warehouse, which indicates it's going to be used a lot more robustly than a typical warehouse would be, because you have more docks. You have more opportunity to throughput materials through the warehouse.
So that's a measure of intensity, is the number of dock
Intensity
doors?
use. Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
A 155 warehouse, this 155 sort facility, that's it's considered a fulfillment center. The closest thing I can think of is an Amazon warehouse. That's usually a type of warehouse that needs at least 500,000 square feet and a height of 35 feet or so for all the automation equipment. And these types of warehouses that is being proposed for this use are attractive to folks who operate fulfillment centers because of the size and the ceiling height. So-
And let me back you up for one moment. You had said that 221,000 square feet is 292,000 square feet is the average site of the ITE's 150 warehouse? How does that relate to this building? What percentage?
Well, it's like 3 times less.
47%? Is
Yeah,
that
okay,
right?
that's a half against small. Yeah.
As you've noted on page 3 of your report, correct?
There you go, read my report again. Yes, that is correct, that's what I noted on my report.
All right.
Did you write this report, sir?
I did write this report, yes, sir.
I just read it. All right. So, Mr. Non, when you look at the ITE Land Use Code 155, is there an average size that's associated with that use?
Yes, typically it's a lot larger. I'm looking forward to my report unless you can tell me
Page
where
4.
I put it. Page 4 of my report.
About halfway down. I had the advantage of not having to drive 2.5 hours, so I had some extra time
The
to make
average
some notes.
size of a 155 warehouse is 886,000 square feet.
And relatively speaking, you'd agree that that's closer in size to the proposed use here, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. So, in addition to the building size, how else did you compare them? 156, is there an average building size for that?
Yeah, 156, and again, I'll find that in the report. That's, I believe it's a little bit less than the 155, but it's still a very large warehouse. 543,000 square feet.
And you found that at the top of page 5, correct?
Yeah, that's the top of page 5.
Okay, and that's actually quite close to the proposed use in this case?
It's the closest use to the size of this warehouse, yes.
Okay, so if you were looking at size comparison alone, the closest would be the 156, second 155, third would be 150.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you talk about an Amazon facility that is a fulfillment center, there was some discussion the last time between a sort and non-sort.
Yes, sir.
Is there a sort and non-sort designation for each one of these land use codes, or just the 155?
Just the 155.
Okay. So how do you distinguish the sort versus non-sort? Because we heard from the applicant some testimony about the non-sort.
A non-sort facility where you would take, I guess, for instance, a tractor trailer load of material, and it would come out on a pallet and go into a smaller truck and go across the dock and move out to another location. A sort facility, whereas they would take that tractor trailer and take all the materials out of it, resort them and put them in a lot smaller trucks for essentially delivery to your home or office or something like that.
So if this is the type of facility where we may see vans leaving the facility to make deliveries, but the goods brought in on tractor trailers.
Typically, that's how a sort facility works, yes, sir.
Okay. So Is there a location component that's noted in the ITE for 155?
Well, generally with a 155 warehouse, and again, I'm going to refer to my report back to the table, the location for a 155 is often near a parcel hub or UPS facility. Again, this is, a 155 fulfillment center is all about time. So the time is very sensitive. You want to make sure that stuff is delivered on time. So that's usually where it's located. In our case, this facility is located in a suburban neighborhood. I don't know that there's any UPS facility nearby or any highways nearby that are that close, so.
And similarly with the Land Use Code 156, the parcel hub, are there locations that are typical for that?
Yeah, but parcel hubs are generally located near airports. Most of your large parcel firms like UPS or USPS or FedEx, ship most of the parcels in airplanes, so they want the parcel hubs that take the shipments from the airplanes and distribute it to the neighborhoods near an airport.
Okay. Have we gotten a description from the applicant in this case of how this facility will operate?
No, we have not.
Okay, so we can't compare the function to what we don't know.
That's correct,
right?
sir.
But we can compare location, we can compare the objective features like dock doors, size, building height.
Size and building height are key, yes, sir.
Okay. And have you, I'll go back to your experience for a moment. Have you analyzed traffic impact studies for warehouse proposals before?
Yes, sir.
And have you seen the use of various land use codes?
Most people come in with a 150, sir.
And is the explanation similar to what you've heard here?
Yes, it's always either the word generic or the word speculative.
Okay. So, in that same vein, have you seen, you've heard the applicant's testimony that essentially PennDOT or the township may require a subsequent traffic study and to determine basically a validity check. Is that right?
I heard that testimony and I've seen that, yes.
Okay. And do you address that later on in your
I
report?
do talk about that in my report, yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll continue to focus on the characteristics and what your analysis is of the most appropriate land use code. Are there other features or factors associated with the one land use code versus the other that you think best fits what you've seen based on the sketch plan and the applicant's characteristics of how this will operate?
Well, I mean, we can talk about parking. I do talk about that later in the report. They're providing more parking than would typically be necessary for this type of facility, which would suggest a more intense use than a land use code 150. It really comes down to the fundamental principle that we're building a warehouse that could be used for a 155 sort facility.
Okay.
We've had no testimony, no documentation, no anything that says that it's going to be this, that, or the other thing. Well, just from a professional standpoint, we need to at least generate the trips based on what that maximum use of that warehouse could be in order to have an adequate understanding of how it's going to affect the local road network.
So when we're talking about things like the high cubes as a general matter, particularly the 156, are there other things that are identified as often or sometimes being on site, other services that you've identified?
Well, 156 warehouses generally might have truck servicing facilities and things like that on site. Where you would lay over tractors as they pull trailers in and out, and things of that nature. 155 warehouses are characterized by a ton of parking for all those vans when they're not out on the street delivering packages.
Okay. And are there wash or fueling facilities as well that are often?
You would typically see that at a 156 facility. Again, you're bringing trucks in on a constant basis and sending out packages, so the tractors themselves and the trailers need to be washed.
Is it a requirement or a hard criteria of the ITE to have those facilities?
No.
Okay.
Not
And
at
those
all.
facilities aren't proposed here, correct?
Not according to the plans I've reviewed.
Okay. And are those types of facilities frequently with a 155 or not?
Not necessarily with 155.
Okay. Sort or non-sort, it doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter, right?
Okay. When you refer to the 155 land use code here, are you taking a look at the, are you comparing to the sort or non-sort, or are the criteria close in rendering a determination as to which one applies?
At one point in my report, I did look at both, but if we're talking about what's going to be the maximum traffic impact, what's going to be the maximum detriment or adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, we need to look at the 155 sort, since it generates so much more traffic than any other type of the warehouse uses.
So, and looking at those other criteria, and you talked about dock doors, you said 1 per 20,000 is the typical for a 150.
For a warehouse, yes, a generic
Okay.
warehouse.
And in this case, we had 1 per 7,700,
Yes, sir.
so about 2/3 more capacity of dock doors than what you would typically see with the Land Use Code 150.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Is it, I suppose the next question really is, what does that difference look like? How do you compare? Have you looked at comparisons of the various land use codes to see how the selecting the various codes translates into trip generation numbers?
Yes, sir. On page 6 of my report, I provided a table that compares the 150 land use that the applicant is proposing to a 155 non-sort, a 155 sort, and a 156 warehouse type.
And to be fair, the applicant provided a 155 non-sort analysis, at least to some degree, in their trip generation materials,
They
correct?
did, yes, sir.
Okay. But they left out 155 sort and 156, correct?
Yes, they did, sir.
Okay. Can you walk through the board through what the differences are?
Sure, and I'm going to just simply refer to the top line of the chart, the average weekday. Consistent with the applicant's transportation impact study, the 155 or 150 land use code generic warehouse is going to generate approximately 1,020 vehicles per day as a result of that warehouse.
Okay.
A 155 non-sort facility is going to generate 1,124 vehicles per day, about 100 more vehicles than a 150.
So roughly 10% more.
You could say that, yes, sir.
How about a 155 sort?
A 155 sort is going to generate 3,999 vehicles per day, approximately 4 times the amount of traffic that a 150 warehouse, as proposed by the applicant, would generate.
And how about a 156?
156 is going to be 2,875 trips a day, 2.5 times, I guess, roughly more than what the applicant has proposed.
So this particular, this analysis comes from basically taking the square footage the same way that the applicant did,
Yes, sir.
and applying the land use code, the various land use codes, to the ITE trip generation numbers.
I used all the same criteria that the applicant used in his transportation impact study, yes, sir.
So, and we're talking about a difference of potentially 4 times as much traffic for the 155 sort, and about 2.5 times, a little more than 2.5 times for the 156.
That's correct, sir.
How does that translate to the impacts that are felt on an hourly basis?
Well, if you just, you look at, I have AM and PM peak periods here for enters and exits. For a 150 warehouse, in the AM peak period, you'll have 76 vehicles entering and 23 vehicles exiting. For the 155 sort facility, you'll have 438 vehicles entering and 102 vehicles exiting.
And the 156?
156, you'll have 217 vehicles entering and 218 vehicles exiting.
Similar discrepancies in the PM peak?
Yes,
Okay. So essentially, 4 times as much in the 155 sort and 3 times as much in the 156.
roughly, yes, sir.
Okay. So when we're talking about this trip generation, how does that then translate into applying the township zoning ordinance? You said that you reviewed that and you're familiar with its requirements.
Yes, sir.
Do you address that on page 7?
Thought I addressed it on page 10, but I believe I talked to it on page 7 too, yes.
Okay, and do you have did you make some observations as to what the traffic impact study requires?
Page 7? Yeah, well, yes, the zoning requirements are that you demonstrate the most intensive use that could be coming from the site. This transportation impact study does not reflect the most intense use that's possible simply with this warehouse that is proposed to be built here.
Why is it important to identify the most intense use at this stage instead of trying to fix it later?
Well, trying to fix it later is an untenable solution. I mean, first of all, if you're looking for an accurate depiction and you say you're going to wait till somebody occupies it and then count the traffic, what happens if you do have 4 times more traffic? Are you then going to tell the people that are occupying the warehouse that they must vacate the warehouse? You're going to lose your certificate of occupancy until such time as you then build all the improvements that are necessary now to ameliorate all this adverse traffic that you didn't account for in the first place. So there's no real way. It's a nice thing to say, but there's no real way to actually do that.
When your facility would front and exit onto 2 state highways, would the township have the ability to approve or direct improvements that would affect the number of lanes, for instance, or turn lanes or traffic lights? Those things that are on the state highway, do they have the control over those things?
They don't have the control, but they certainly have the authority to say, yes, we need more lanes on this road or not, because we're looking at the adverse impacts from a public health, safety, and welfare standpoint. If you're coming out to a state highway, if there's not enough lanes, well, then you're going to have an adverse impact on the local transportation network, whether it's a state highway or a local road, it doesn't matter.
And this ordinance deals with a standard that talks about truck or rail access causing conflicts or safety issues with existing traffic, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Is that a consideration in selecting the appropriate land use code and the resulting trip generation?
Absolutely.
Okay. Were there concerns that had been raised during in the information you reviewed as to the PennDOT scoping meeting or the subsequent letters? Was there a discussion about the concern over improvements that couldn't be accommodated?
Well, there were various discussions, I think at least 2 points in the scoping meeting minutes and things like that, if you want to, that discussed that, what could and could not be done on particularly US 30 and what would or would not be allowed on US 30.
Okay. And did the county make some concerns known?
The county had concerns that they didn't want it to be 4 lanes, and we're looking at a situation where if we're going to increase the traffic by 4-fold, we could need additional lanes on 30.
Okay. Had the county identified the 94 corridor as a larger planning issue than just this project?
Yes, and in fact, that's what the most recent stuff from October of this year is what they're looking at now, is what is necessary for that corridor based on its use and their concerns with it.
So how do we reconcile this? If they don't know who their tenant is, then is there a solution to that in terms of a restriction now?
I don't know how you would craft it. I mean, unless you want to sit there and, the board wanted to sit there and just name different tenants and say these could be allowed, these couldn't be allowed. The building size itself and the building height itself is a high cube warehouse. So we are looking at a high cube warehouse, not a land use code 150.
Okay.
So the maximum use that could become with a high cube warehouse would be a 155 sort facility. So the easiest, the cleanest way to do it is to simply generate the trips from a 155 facility and then redo all your traffic analysis and see what impacts are there and make recommendations for improvements to make those impacts go away.
In order to provide that information to the township or the board or even PennDOT, would you have to start over?
Well, I mean,
In preparing a traffic study, would the applicant have to start from scratch to do that?
yes, the traffic study, I mean, the fundamental basic point of a traffic impact study is the trip generation.
But my point is, would they be able to use the land use codes and the trip generation numbers and basically provide the same data to the board or PennDOT or the township that would answer what the traffic volumes would be, trip generation, et cetera, for those other land use codes?
Certainly, you could put in the new trip generation numbers. They've already set up all the intersection models. They simply can change their distribution of traffic based on the new level of impact and then rerun all their models.
And so they don't have to redo their manual counts, they don't have
No,
to
no, no,
redo
no.
their site visits or applying the background growth or the-
Manual counts will still be the same, background growth would still be the same.
and the other projects that are being considered.
Still the same.
So it's just a matter of trip generation based on land use code and trip distribution.
Yes.
Okay. So, we heard some testimony about whether or not PennDOT has approved Land Use Code 150. Did you find any evidence to support that conclusion in your review of the report?
I find nothing in there that specifically says we approve the use of Land Use Code 150.
Okay. How about, you heard the testimony last week. Do you agree with that conclusion that it's got a tacit approval?
Not at all. I mean, the absence of any approval from PennDOT doesn't mean it's approved.
Okay. And how about the approval of the general scope? At the stage it is, would you expect to have a clear approval in your experience
You would have some type of further sign-off by PennDOT, yes.
than what we've been presented with?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, as to parking, you talked about that, and on page 8, you described that. Let me stop for 1 second before I move on to the parking. Based on what you have seen thus far and the characterizations or the characteristics of this facility, is there a land use code that you believe best fits the proposed, that meets the proposed use with what you expect the impacts to be?
In the absence of any other information from the applicant about who is going to occupy the warehouse, how it's going to be used, based on the size of the warehouse, you have no choice but to use 155 sort.
Okay. And that is, again, the land use code that would result in 4 times greater trip generation than the 150, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. The analysis you did with regard to parking, it starts on page 8. Can you tell the board what that analysis entails?
Sure. The plan has 258 parking spaces, I believe, if I counted it properly. That's exclusive of the proposed trailer parking spaces. This is where it gets interesting. Your ordinance requires 1 parking space by 1.5 employees on the largest shift. So the applicant has said, okay, that's going to be 350 employees. But we don't know what the use of the warehouse is going to be. So how do we know how many employees are going to be in there? I mean, I don't know how you meet the ordinance requirement if you don't know what the warehouse is going to be used at and how many employees are going to be in there. Alternately, if you know how many employees are going to be in there, then you really have an idea what the use is going to be. You're just not telling us. So if you use their logic of 1 parking space for 1.5 employees on the largest shift, and you assume 350 employees, you need 233 parking spaces. But the applicant is proposing 258 parking spaces. So again, we're even proposing more parking spaces than the ordinance is requiring.
Let me ask you this question. In your experience reviewing traffic studies and reviewing, I assume, land development plans that are associated with those traffic studies, you have to look at the plans themselves, correct?
Sure, that's correct.
Is it typical to see an applicant provide additional parking than what's required?
Well, I will say that my experience on working for applicants, my experience on that side of the table as 10 years as a township supervisor, I've never, ever seen an applicant come in and build more parking than they're absolutely required to build.
Why not?
Because parking costs money. It's impervious surface. Not only does it create more paving, but now you've got more drainage. It affects your size of your drainage pipes, the size of your drainage basins. They want to build as little parking as they can get away with.
Okay. Now, 233 to 258 doesn't sound like a whole lot.
It's not.
It's,
But again, that affects drainage calculations, all kinds of things like that.
well, and it's an additional 10%, correct?
It's an additional 10%, more
Okay.
pavement, more construction.
Okay. So, and again, your point in this was, if you have a basis to identify the number of employees to calculate parking, you should have a better idea of what the use is going to be, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. And you'd be able to extrapolate from that knowledge what what appropriate land use code to use instead of giving nothing.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. So, can you tell us a little bit more about the, so Land Use Code 150, how many spaces would be required to support the warehouse?
The ITE, like the trip generation manual, has something called a parking generation manual. And what they say for a land use code 150 is 230 to 242 parking spaces.
So, a little closer to what the township's ordinance would require,
A little closer, yes, sir.
but less than what the applicant's proposing.
Less than what the applicant's proposing.
Okay. So, is there another method to calculate trip generation based on Land Use Code 150 that does not involve square footage?
There is, actually, and that's, again, it gets a little bit interesting here. The applicants provided us no information with regards to what the use of the warehouse is going to be, but they've provided information how many employees are going to be there. Well, the ITE trip generation manual for Land Use Code 150 allows you to generate trips based on the number of employees.
Now, we heard Mr. Schick say at the last hearing that he doesn't typically see that done. Is that your experience as well?
I've seen it done before. Again, I would agree with them to some extent. It's not typically done, but
Okay.
there is a methodology to do it, and it's a perfectly valid way to generate things, especially when you don't know who's going to be in the warehouse, but somehow you know the number of employees. Well, if that's the information we know, then why don't we just do a traffic impact study based on the number of employees, since we're using that number of employees to state that we're meeting an ordinance requirement?
And have you provided in your report an analysis of how that would, the trip generation that would be extrapolated from 350 employees?
I did, and
Okay.
if you run that number for 350 employees using Land Use Code 150, the average weekday traffic is 1,768 vehicles, as opposed to the 1,020 vehicles for a 621,000 square foot warehouse.
So another 748 trips per day of average weekday traffic.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and that's in your chart on page 9, is that correct?
Page 9 of my report has that chart, yes, sir.
So how does that compare in an AM peak hour?
In the AM peak hour, under 150, based on square footage, you would have 76 trips, as we've discussed before. If you base it on 350 employees, you would have 154 trips entering and 60 trips exiting.
So you'd have approximately twice as many entering trips and about 3 times as many exiting.
That's correct, sir.
And then in the PM peak hours, similar disparities?
Similar disparities, yes, sir.
Okay. So is would a traffic impact study using Land Use Code 150 and using the employee number methodology for calculating trip generation provide at least a better estimate than the square footage methodology that the applicant used?
Well, it's certainly more defensible. If you're saying that there's going to be 350 employees, then that certainly is now you have a basis for generating trips as opposed to nothing at all.
And I guess the ultimate question really is, why have a traffic impact study at all? What is it designed to show?
It's designed to show the impacts to the roadway network. In other words, what is going to be I'll call it the degradation of the level of service at the various intersections and roadway segments around this land development, and, what are the impacts to the traffic on the roads.
But essentially, a traffic impact study it's modeling. It's taking
Yes,
existing data, it's applying the suppositions or assumptions that are put in by the engineer, and it's analyzing the resulting combination of the two. Is
Yes.
that fair?
that's fair.
And you're looking for levels of service, periods where vehicles are waiting to enter an intersection.
Delay.
Delay.
Yes, levels of service and delay, yes, sir.
Okay. And are you looking for that in the context of you have to look at it in reality. You're not saying that this is some hypothetical site out in the middle of nowhere. You're looking at it, superimposing it on what's already there.
Fundamentally is based on the existing traffic, the background growth numbers, and what your trip generation is going to be.
Okay. So can you talk about the impacts that can be gleaned based on the applicant's traffic impact study and what it seems as if you're saying are underestimates of traffic generation or trip generation?
Well, sure. Under Section 15098DD of the Hamilton Township Code, talks about truck terminals, warehouses, and wholesale businesses. And what it says is that truck or rail access and operations shall not conflict with the convenience and safety of vehicle, traffic, and parking. So what we're fundamentally looking at is the traffic from this truck facility, this warehouse, affecting the convenience and safety of the vehicle traffic in the area. And the way that we need to do that is we need to look at is what's the maximum impact that's going to occur from this warehouse, and then evaluate that. And right now, we're not doing that in this traffic impact study. We're looking at some nebulous number, not what the maximum impact could be.
And we've heard some testimony that dealt with levels of service, PennDOT standards and the measures of delay and the 10 seconds. Is that, having been a township supervisor, township traffic engineer, and doing work for developers, is the PennDOT traffic impact study model designed to answer the same question that an ordinance like Hamilton Township's requirements are looking to answer? Are they measuring the same things?
Not at all. I guess there tends to be a general confusion, I guess, between the two. The applicant's requirements for PennDOT deal with the two driveways to Route 30 and Route 94. That's all.
Okay.
The traffic signal, for instance, at 94 and 30, is the responsibility of the three townships in which it resides, Hamilton, Oxford, and Berwick. They dictate what happens at that signal. I appreciate the applicant's testimony about 10 seconds and what it does or does not, constitute a delay in PennDOT's mind, but that's great for a highway occupancy permit that is directly discharged into a PennDOT signal, or perhaps you're creating a PennDOT signal. This, as the applicant says, this is an off-site signal. So frankly, this signal has nothing to do with the PennDOT highway occupancy permit. PennDOT's only permitting the two unsignalized low-volume driveways that are shown as part of the land development plan. So that's all PennDOT's really concerned about necessarily. Whatever traffic study is done on behalf of meeting the township requirements, yes, would be submitted to PennDOT, but it's not like PennDOT's going to say, oh, no, you don't have to make, that doesn't matter for the purposes of the two driveways because the signal, according to the applicant, is off-site.
And we're talking about the signal at the proposed site entrance at Stanley Drive? Is that, or are you talking about the one at Cross Keys?
Talking about Cross Keys intersection.
Okay. So that, you're talking about changes to that permit,
Yes.
signalization adjustments, timing adjustments, things like that. That falls outside of the highway occupancy. But it's a way to manage impacts, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You have a note in here about the characterization about that intersection specifically. That the Cross Keys intersection is the busiest intersection in Adams County?
That's been my experience, and in all my analysis of that particular intersection for other matters, that has come up more than one time, yes.
Okay. And is it operating at a passing level of service?
Barely.
Right now?
Barely.
Okay. How about during the morning and evening peak hours now?
No, it fails in some movements.
Okay. And how about with the applicant's traffic, even at the levels that they are suggesting trips will be generated, even with their trip generation?
We would still have some movements that fail, yes.
Okay. So, would there be additional delay to getting through that intersection?
Yes, there will be.
And I think you noted approximately 30 seconds per vehicle, correct?
In some instances, yes. And again, let's understand that that's based on the trips generated from Land Use Code 150. If we were to generate those trips based on 155, there'd be a heck of a lot more delay through that intersection.
Okay. So, again, PennDOT's worried about the intersections of the driveway with the state routes. Is the Hamilton Township ordinance limited to where those driveways come out in terms of traffic impacts.
The Hamilton ordinance has nothing to do with those driveways. Those driveways are PennDOT's
Okay.
responsibility since it's a PennDOT highway.
So how about, were you here, you were here for the testimony last week, and were you here for the testimony related to the other local intersections that were not studied?
Yes,
Okay. Do you think that that is an omission that calls into question the validity of measuring the traffic impacts as the ordinance requires?
on the basis of the Hamilton Township ordinance, yes.
Okay, and that's our governing instrument tonight, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Not PennDOT Publication 282, not PennDOT's highway or traffic impact study manual, whatever guidelines exist. Those are not relevant to what the township's zoning hearing board is to look at in terms of the traffic impact study that's submitted for their consideration, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Is it fair to say that it's often that it occurs that a traffic impact study may try to address both PennDOT standards and a township's ordinance standards?
Oh, absolutely. You want to try to do, if you can, one traffic impact study. Now, PennDOT isn't going to approve the driveways, even though they're on state highways, unless there's township approval of the land development. Okay? But the traffic impact study actually needs to be geared more to the township requirements than the PennDOT requirements. You don't want to hide behind the PennDOT requirements. You want to gear it to the township requirements. If the township approves the land development, approves the traffic impact study, PennDOT's not going to sit there and go, oh, no, we think they're just simply going to look at the driveway, say, we got an approved ordinance, we got or approved land development, we've got an approved traffic signal. It's up to the townships to make those changes. PennDOT doesn't direct changes to that traffic signal. PennDOT only approves changes. The operation, maintenance of that traffic signal is the responsibility of the three townships, not PennDOT,
One of which is Hamilton.
one of which is Hamilton, right?
Okay.
That's not PennDOT's responsibility unless that intersection, that signal was actually at one of the driveways. It's not. So PennDOT is only looking at the two driveways. So if this applicant comes in with a traffic study that meets the Hamilton Township requirements, gets his land development approval, gets the traffic study approved by Hamilton Township, he submits that to PennDOT, and he still only does one traffic study and everything's fine.
So is PennDOT ever going to reject studying additional local intersections?
No.
And in looking at the ordinance, does it exclude intersections that are outside of the municipal boundaries but are within that half-mile area?
It does not.
And did you hear the testimony of identifying other intersections that were within that half-mile radius?
I did.
And you'd agree that those are not studied?
They're not in the traffic impacts or transportation impact study, yes, sir.
But again, PennDOT isn't going to reject the over-analysis. They are setting the minimum requirements of what they think is necessary
Correct.
to look at. To satisfy their requirements, they're not concerned with the application of this ordinance or the requirements of this ordinance.
Not at all. In fact, if you give them more, if you do more improvements other than the driveways, they're not going to care. They're just looking, once they got the approvals, you get your driveways approved.
So if the applicant doesn't have proposed improvements to address their underestimated volumes, then what does the township supposed to do?
Make them do improvements. I mean, certainly under municipalities' planning code, there's a limit of what you can make the applicant do, but at the same time, you don't have to grant approval either.
So the other option is denial?
The other option is denial, yes.
Okay. So did you address the township traffic engineer's review, the 2031 post-development analysis?
Yes, I did. I talked about that.
And can you tell the board how that relates to the rest of your analysis? Can you explain that to them?
Well, again, doing a post-analysis is just not a tenable solution. How are you going to regulate that or adjudicate that if, in fact, the numbers that are counted exceed what was presented in this particular approval process? I mean, what do you do now?
Can you give us an example of the kind of improvements that you're saying might not be able to be provided if this is not planned for at the outset?
Well, I mean, in an extreme case, you need road widening. You need additional
Okay.
lanes on 30, additional lanes on 94, extending right away or extending turn lanes. Now, when you start doing that, you might need additional right-of-way that you don't have the ability to get,
Why not?
because you don't own the property.
Okay.
So, you know, there could even be simple things that could be done by the applicant that haven't been proposed. I mean, the county talks about traffic signal timings and different ways to operate the traffic signal. Those things could have been done, could be proposed by the applicant without requiring any physical improvements to the roadway in an attempt to at least address some of these impacts to the traffic.
And there was some discussion of signalization timing as a possible improvement, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But nothing concrete to be able to rely upon. Is that what your
Nothing that the
testimony
applicants
is?
presented or nothing in the applicant's transportation impact study, yes.
Okay. The county has been putting some significant resources into analyzing the future development and growth in the Cross Keys intersection area in that, the 94 corridor, correct?
That's correct.
And is that study available yet?
Not yet. I actually asked the developer at the county, copied I believe it's Michael Baker that's doing the analysis for the county. Nobody could provide me a copy of the study at this point.
But is it fair to say that the county, along with the municipalities that are all part of that intersection, have identified concerns over traffic volumes, additional growth, additional degradation, even without this application being factored in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are there, those studies are underway, but there are no conclusions yet that can be borne on to this analysis. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. So, again, in your report, you talked again about the Hamilton Township traffic impact study requirements. Can you just identify those matters that are relevant to your analysis and your conclusions?
Certainly. I've already mentioned section 150-98 DD14. Under the ordinance,
And that's the zoning ordinance provision specifically for this use that requires the applicant to provide a traffic impact study for the consideration at the special exception stage, and it draws in the requirements of the subdivision land development ordinance.
correct. Well, 150-98 DD globally says you prepare the traffic impact study consistent with the SALDO section 120-36.
But again, that's a specific requirement for warehouses. Not every use under the Hamilton Township zoning ordinance requires a traffic study. Is that fair?
That's correct. That's fair.
Okay. And what is it under 120-36B1 that is relevant?
Well, 120-36.B1 says the TIS shall identify the additional level of traffic a proposed project will have on the local transportation network. Well, they haven't done that because we don't have any consideration as the maximum land use that could be resulting from that size warehouse.
So again, this goes back to your testimony about the proper land use code. Is that what you consider essentially the central assumption or the central determination that everything else flows from?
That is the fundamental issue in this matter that everything else flows from, yes, sir.
Okay. So, and how does that affect the other, the application of the other ordinance requirements?
Well, 120-36.B4 says the TIS shall be prepared in accordance with the standards of the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and the Institute of Transportation Engineers. As I discussed, is the fact that the Institute of Transportation Engineers defines a high cube warehouse as something greater than 200,000 square feet and 24 feet in height. The applicant hasn't offered a transportation impact study using a high cube warehouse land use. Well, then they don't meet this particular part of the ordinance.
Okay. Are there other provisions of the ordinance?
Sure,
that-
120-36B5E notes that the TIS shall provide information regarding the following, and it says traffic impacts of the surrounding neighborhood.
What would you consider, how would you define the surrounding neighborhood, or is it defined by the ordinance?
Well, it's not necessarily defined by the ordinance, but we have two local streets that are adjacent, the two closest streets in Hamilton Township that are adjacent to this development, and neither of those streets nor the intersection of those streets were even looked at as part of the transportation impact study, so they don't meet that particular provision.
And which Hamilton Township roadways are you referring to?
Woods and
Forest, correct?
Forest, yes, that's it, it was an F, I couldn't think of it.
And Forest is the intersection that wasn't studied whatsoever. The intersection of Forest and 94 was not
Correct.
studied whatsoever in the traffic impact study.
That's correct.
And is Woods Drive, it is analyzed, its intersection with Route 30, correct? Or not?
I don't think it is.
Okay. And did those two township roads intersect?
They do intersect each other, yes.
Okay.
So you could look at the impacts for that intersection too. I mean, when you think of the problems that are associated with that particular intersection at Cross Keys, one of the solutions for those types of problems is sometimes to build a ring road around the intersection. Well, the Forest Woods connection, that Wood intersects 30, Forest intersects 94, they both roads intersect each other. Well, that's basic one quadrant of what would be considered a ring road. So if you're going on 30 west and you want to go 94 north, well, one way to avoid the traffic going through an intersection would be to make a right turn on Woods, go down to Forest, make a left turn on Forest, go back out to 94, and make a right turn on 94. You've avoided now the intersection and all the delay that's associated with it.
Is that what's referred to in your industry as a bypass
You
trip?
could call it a bypass. Well, not
Or-
necessarily, no.
Or is there a term for a diverted trip or?
It's more of a diverted trip than a pass-by trip, yes.
Is that a typical phenomenon associated with a high-volume intersection like Cross Keys?
It's something that, in my experience and from other studies that we've found that, yes, when you have intersections that are as congested as Cross Keys, people are going to seek alternate routes, and when you have these connections that will allow you to bypass the intersection, that's what people are going to do.
And does that create a potential health, safety, welfare risk, or particularly a traffic safety risk for township roads that may not be designed to handle that volume?
Well, I did drive down both of those roads, took a look at them. They're very narrow roads. They're probably not equipped to handle additional volumes of traffic that could result if you're trying to avoid an overly congested intersection.
And those are roads that have regular school bus traffic on them and are not high mile an hour roads?
No. And there's residences there. I don't know that I ever saw a school bus, but I have to assume that there's school bus traffic there.
Okay. Are there other provisions in the subdivision land development ordinance that apply to traffic impact studies that you think were not met?
Sure. 12036.B6 states that the TAS shall include any engineering studies needed to justify traffic control devices that may be needed in conjunction with the proposed development project. Township engineers' review letter pointed out that traffic signal warrant analysis were needed at 3 intersections, and a crash diagram was absent from the Cross Keys intersection, but none of that was provided, so we don't meet that provision of the ordinance.
And were those matters that were identified after the initial meetings with PennDOT and the initial submissions and reviews? This has gone through a few stages of review, has it not?
Yes, it has, yes.
And have some of those observations or criticisms or comments, as they're referred to, I think, in your industry, have those comments been repeated and not addressed?
Yes, especially with the relation to the crash diagram. I mean, you've done a crash analysis, you can easily provide a crash diagram.
Okay. And how about, are there any other provisions of the ordinance?
12036D1 says the TIS shall at a minimum include the following elements: project narrative indicating at a minimum the size and nature of the proposed development. Well, we got the size, but we have no idea what the nature is. We continually hear it's generic, it's speculative. Well, that doesn't meet the ordinance requirement then for providing the nature of the proposed development.
And that is a specific criteria that then is associated with this board's inquiry on whether or not the applicant has met its burden.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anything else that you found in the subdivision land development ordinance specifically?
12036.F4.
Okay.
I'm not going to read the whole section here, but what it says is that the TIS has to evaluate both the average anticipated conditions and the worst-case conditions. When the underlying data is highly variable or not truly representative of the proposed use and location.
Now, there is some caveat language there that says that the township may require the TIS to evaluate that, correct?
That's correct.
Now, in an instance like this where there has been a contentious presentation and the township has appeared, is it, in your experience, the best practice to provide that data on your own so that it would satisfy it if the township would require it, even
Well,
at this point?
Again, anytime you're doing a traffic impact study, especially in a zoning, special exception, conditional use realm, you have to look at the worst-case scenario. And we're not doing that here. We're just simply not looking at what could be the worst case from the occupation of this warehouse.
So can the board fully evaluate what the impacts of this use would be without that information?
No, they cannot.
Okay. And the applicant hasn't indicated the use. So what should the TIS do to meet the requirements of the ordinance?
Generate the trips based on a 155 sort facility.
Okay. And I think we sort of talked about this, that the TIS has a requirement under 12036.G3. Is that relevant to your analysis of the adequacy of this traffic impact study?
Yes, what it says is unless otherwise specified by the township supervisors, following a recommendation of the township engineer, improvements shall be considered for any roadway segment or intersection where the project will have an adverse impact when compared to the background level of service.
So let me ask you this question. If we haven't analyzed local intersections of Forest and 94, 30 and Woods, and Forest and Woods, can we have do we have any information on the adverse impacts compared to the background level of service on those local roads?
We do not.
And are you aware of anything of record or any testimony that was offered that suggests that the township supervisors have received a recommendation from the township engineers and have specified that those two roads in particular need not be analyzed?
I have not.
And is there anything that you heard in the testimony that suggests that there has not been a recommendation or a other specification? Let me ask that question a little more artfully. Are you aware of any deviation that the township supervisors have permitted to excuse the applicant from analyzing either of these local intersections or roadway segments?
I am not.
Okay. So, and that even includes the Cross Keys intersection in terms of having a full analysis of it, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And the approaches to it on 94, the approaches to it on 30, any of those implicated local intersections as well. Is
That's
that right?
correct. That's correct, sir.
Okay. Is the township's 10-second rule applicable at all in analyzing the ordinance's requirements for conflicts or safety issues related to truck access to this site as required by the ordinance?
PennDOT's.
PennDOT's, excuse me,
Second
I'm
rule is
sorry.
not applicable in this case, as PennDOT's not evaluating this traffic signal.
Okay. Can you, have you reached opinions with regard to the various components of your analysis following your review of the traffic impact study and the other supporting information in this case?
I have.
Okay. Have you set forth those opinions in your report?
Yes, I did.
And they begin on page 14?
Yes, page 14 and 15.
Okay. Can you walk through those opinions? And I will ask you as a blanket matter, or do you offer those opinions to a reasonable degree of professional engineering certainty as to all of those opinions?
I do, yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. Number one, the transportation impact study, and again, I'm going to summarize as quickly as I can, does not meet the requirements of the Township Code, Section 150-98DD. The use is not consistent with the code regarding truck terminals, warehouses, and wholesale businesses. The transportation impact study was not prepared consistent with Section 120-36 of the subdivision and land development ordinance as required under Section 150-98 DD of the zoning code. As presented, the transportation impact study does not properly report the maximum number of trips that could be associated with this proposed use. The size of the proposed warehouse, the configuration of loading docks, the amount of parking provided are not consistent with the land use cited in the transportation impact study.
That's that land use code 150, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Due to the speculative nature of the applicant's proposal, the transportation impact study should be revised to reflect the most intensive use that could be accommodated by the proposed development. In the absence of changes to the traffic signal at York Road and Carlisle Pike, the proposed development will have a detrimental impact to public health, safety, and welfare as it relates to traffic. The applicant's transportation impact study failed to provide the zoning hearing board with sufficient information to assess the impacts related to the convenience and safety of vehicular traffic on township roads and intersections. As presented, the applicant's proposed use will create inconvenience to vehicular traffic at the intersection of York Road and Carlisle Pike. As presented, the applicant's traffic impact study does not provide sufficient information to determine whether the proposed use will be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood with regards to vehicular traffic. And as presented, the applicant's traffic impact study does not provide sufficient information to determine whether the peak traffic generated by the application can be accommodated in a safe and efficient manner.
Okay, and Mr. Nahn, you've sealed this report as a registered professional engineer, which is, again, that requirement that we talked about when the applicant presented its traffic study, that your analysis is being offered as a professional engineer and with the expertise that you've been offered tonight.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. That having been presented, I'd offer the objector's exhibit number 3 into evidence, and I offer Mr. Nahn for cross.
Any objections to objectors 3?
No
Township?
objection.
I have no objection.
Before we get to cross, let's take a 5-minute break.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very well said, both.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm on your side, trust me.
It's me.
Slow down.
Let him ask the question before you answer.
I don't know how you folks keep up with me when I
I'm
talk.
going to tell him, don't ask the question until you're done.
It's much worse on cross anyway. I
That's
tried
what I
to,
anticipated.
I tried to,
So I'm just saying, you're already fast. You do not say the word impact. You blur right through it.
All right. So noted.
Because I did not hear it, but I know that's what you're saying.
You're not the first to say that, yes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad because it's making me feel a little inadequate.
No. I have judges tell me that too. Slow down.
To keep the mics towards you. Because you're too much back there.
Okay.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
Very good, Ted.
Thank you.
Hey, nice time, dude.
whatever you do, don't put it on. My mom did, and she developed, she's actually shorter on one side because her muscles. Yeah. I didn't even notice. Gotcha. I legitimately was just worried about you. Because usually you're pretty quick about it. And that's fine. It was actually Sam Weiser and I were talking on my way here. I had asked him if he had a case that he knew of in land use that limited rebuttal, and he said, rules of evidence. I'm like, yeah, this is due process. He said, we're entitled to that. And he said, you evaluate the application as it is when it's submitted. You don't get to keep replacing it. So. I got it in my head. I'm good. How are you?
I'm Ken.
Hi, Ken. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Fortunately or unfortunately, not my first rodeo, and I've learned a lot along the way, and he's taught me a shit ton. So, pardon my French. Well, I'm going to ask you to excuse me.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
When they start up again.
Sometimes get to a point during the week, like say, deadlines, and that whole day is just lost because I just don't feel like doing it. I got nothing impressive. We're just going to relax. Take the walk.
I was up So my docketing station is due tomorrow. I only got one comment in the case. Two cases. Which is right, which is why I just told the story. And I didn't get any issues until the last second.
All right, folks, start getting back to your seats.
We won't start till I think I just wrote his finding in the draft.
Yeah, so tomorrow is,
I'm saying, I think I just wrote his findings in the draft. From the Mushroom Hill Fund.
well, it turns out it's not mushroom, lost. Smith Land became a Charlie Sir in April 2022. And the zoning office, this is pending ordinance issue, the zoning office said, application not. Yes, we got the application.
No.
That's the same as fucking April 2022, submitted, May,
Was it denied as administratively incomplete?
No, denied.
And that's a township which has some sophistication.
Mr. Wolf, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to get started, guys. Everybody quiet down. So just to recap, we did admit objectors Exhibit 3, and objectors are now offering Mr. Non to cross. We'll start with the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Non. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, thank you. So I understand that your main contention here is that the land use code that should have been used out of the ITE would be 155 sort instead of 150, which was used in the applicant's traffic impact study. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Do you prepare traffic impact studies regularly for industrial developers?
I have.
When was the last time you prepared one?
Probably about 10 years ago, sir.
Okay. And when you were preparing them, how often did you use 150 as your land use code?
Anytime the warehouse was less than 200,000 square feet.
So you would never use it for a warehouse more than 200,000 square feet?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And how many did you prepare 10 years? So 10 years ago was the last time you prepared one?
Probably, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So anytime there was a warehouse over 200,000 square feet, and you represent a developer, even if it was a spec building, you would use 155 sort?
Yes, sir. Well, or if he had a use study, if he just general specific spec building, yes, it would have to be a 155 sort.
And that's what you would use for a developer that you would be preparing and which can you name some of the buildings that you worked on?
Not off the top of my head, sir. It's been a while.
Okay. I'm going to direct you to applicant's exhibit 35.
Okay.
Here, do you need a copy?
I do not have one, so
Okay.
I think they're getting one here.
Okay.
Maybe. That's the trip generation information.
You still have it.
The trip generation information.
There we go.
I have it.
Okay. Very good. Can you turn to the first page?
I can, sir, yes.
Okay. At the very bottom of the first page, it states that ITE 150 warehousing, and it says that 36 studies were done to develop these rates with an average size building being 448,000 square feet.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any reason to believe that that statement is not accurate in determining how the ITE 150 has been generated?
I'm just checking to see which edition he's referring to, whether it's 10th or 11th edition, but no, I have no reason to dispute that, sir.
So in determining what the traffic would be for a 150 building, the average building size is 448,000 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so why would you automatically, anything under 200,000 square feet, determine to be a 155 sort?
Because that's what it says in the ITE trip generation manual, sir.
In fact, if you turn to later in this document, turning to, I guess, I'm not sure which page the document is, but it's the page that title says Land Use 155. And am I reading this correctly? It says a high cube warehouse is a building that typically has at least 200,000 gross square feet of floor area and a ceiling height of 24 feet or more, and used primarily for the storage and consolidation of manufactured goods prior to their distribution to retail locations or other warehouses. A typical HCW has a high level of on-site automation and logistics management. The automation and logistics enable highly efficient processing of goods through the HCW, and a high cube warehouse can be freestanding or located in a business park, correct? Or industrial park, correct?
You read that correctly, sir,
Okay,
yes.
so the word typically, that doesn't mean it always has to be, correct?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
typically, yes.
So there's no red line that says if it's over 200,000 square feet, it must be determined to be a 155 high cube sort facility, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and in fact, there's two types of 155 uses, a sort and a non-sort, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And a non-sort was in fact studied by the applicant's engineer and determined to have marginally the same, if not less, trips than a 150 facility, correct?
I believe according to my analysis, it was 10% more, yes, sir.
Okay. Then turning to your document, page 5. Again, without distinction between a sort and non-sort facility, you have a chart on page 5 that says that, first of all, a Land Use Code 150, the location is typically in an industrial area with an urban or urban periphery, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Would you agree that the proposed location of this warehouse is in a commercial zoning district?
I don't know what the zoning district is, but I believe you, sir, if that's what you're going to tell me.
And based upon what we've been discussing since you've been here, you would agree that a warehouse is a permitted use, is a permitted use by special exception, correct?
I believe it is, yes, sir.
Which would make it an industrial area then, correct?
I don't know that I go that far, sir.
Okay. But then we move to your next column for the Land Use Code 155, again, without distinction of sort and non-sort. You say
The study that this is based on, the ITE High Cube Warehouse Vehicle Trip Generation Analysis.
I was asking a question.
Well, I'm trying to explain to you why it doesn't have sort or non-sort there.
I didn't ask you to answer that question.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
My question is, your location says often near a parcel hub or U.S. Postal Service facility due to time sensitivity of freight. If I remember correctly, you testified you don't even know if any of those types of hubs or facilities are even close to this location.
That's correct, sir.
Do you know if they're close to this
To the best of my
location?
knowledge or not.
So why are you choosing 155 if these facilities are not close to the location?
Primarily on the size and the height of the building.
Okay, so then why even have this location criteria if it's only based upon the size and height of the building?
It was a criteria in the table that I used, sir.
So it is a criteria in addition to size and height.
It can be a criteria, yes, sir.
Okay. And then we look at parcel 156, which I think you're also arguing could have been something that should have been looked at. And it says, typically in close proximity to an airport, often stand alone. Where's the closest airport?
I don't know.
Would you agree that's at least over an hour away?
I don't know where it is, but I don't think it's in Hamilton Township. How's that?
Okay. So then based upon your own criteria for the location of these facilities, a 155 sort and a 156 would not be in this location.
Well, neither would a 150, sir,
Why wouldn't a 150 be in this location?
because it's not in an urban area or an urban periphery, sir.
Okay, is there a land use code for in a suburban industrial area?
It doesn't say industrial. It simply says urban area, urban periphery, or suburban neighborhood. This is a suburban neighborhood, sir.
But it's in an area in which industrial uses are permitted, correct?
It's an area where commercial uses are permitted, sir.
And would you say a warehouse is a industrial use?
I'd say it's a commercial use. I don't know if I'd
Okay.
call it, if you're going to manufacture things in a warehouse, yeah, I guess it could be an industrial use, but
Well, typically warehouses don't have manufacturing in them. You'd agree with that, correct?
not necessarily, sir.
Okay. You said during your testimony, I guess, going back to, sorry, we'll correct here, going back to applicant's exhibit 35, we had talked about the flow chart that PennDOT has in its strike-off letter. I believe it's in the last several pages of applicant's 35.
Yes, sir?
Okay. And I do agree that this is a true and correct copy of the PennDOT strike-off letter that was very recently issued on the best practices guidance for permitting speculative warehouse facilities.
Yes, it's the best practices guideline for PennDOT to use when evaluating facilities for driveway permits. Yes, sir.
Okay. And looking at the flow chart then, which is on the page that's marked as G5, you'd agree that when using this flow chart, there's only two possible land use codes that could be used. One would be 150, and the other is 154, which was studied by the applicant, correct?
Well, that's what the flow chart shows, sir, yes.
Okay. And this is PennDOT's best practices, correct?
All right, this is PennDOT's guidelines, best practices for driveway permits. This is not a driveway permit before this board, sir. Okay, this doesn't establish an engineering standard comparable with the IT trip generation manual, sir. This is a PennDOT document that quite frankly, I think lacks credibility because what it's based on lacks credibility, sir.
Okay, so PennDOT lacks credibility?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then, moving then on to, you said that, and I think you just testified that PennDOT's only, the only thing they're looking at is the access onto these state roads. Is that
That's
what you
correct,
said?
sir.
And that's the only thing they're truly permitting.
That's all they're permitting,
Okay.
sir, yes.
Am I correct that if PennDOT would put a condition onto a permit saying that an additional, a traffic signal needs to be retimed or that a traffic signal needs to be placed where one is warranted due to the increase in traffic, that would need to be done by the applicant as a condition for the grant of that approval, correct?
I don't believe PennDOT can have the applicant do off-site improvements, and nor can the PennDOT ever, in any case, tell somebody they got to put in a traffic signal because it's warranted, because our standards that we use for traffic signals never, ever require a traffic signal to be installed. They only permit the installation. There's never a recommendation nor requirement in the manual and uniform traffic control devices for the installation of a traffic signal.
So you're telling me that if PennDOT saw that due to access onto a public road, that it could not condition that permit on the developer expanding, widening a road, adding a traffic signal, adding other control
If it's
signals?
on their site, yes, sir. If it's off-site, no, sir.
You're saying the PennDOT cannot make that as a condition for approval?
I'm saying no, yes, sir.
Okay. And your experience is different than mine.
Okay.
Is that a question? Move the strike.
Yeah, we'll disregard the comment about your experience is different than mine.
Am I correct that you were not present at the scoping meeting?
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
Am I also correct that you are not present or party to any of the discussions between the township engineer and the applicant's engineer on the scope of the traffic study?
That's correct, sir.
the board's indulgence for a couple seconds here.
Just like the anybody who has access to the PennDOT system, or two does.
We have no further questions.
Cross-examined by the township.
Township does not have any questions.
Members of the board, questions for the, Mr. Non? No. Yes?
I'm not sure who I'm going to address this question to. I'll just address the question to both council, I guess, and the township. But there has been testimony that the traffic study does impact two other townships. At no point have I heard any testimony that those townships have any say in this. Do the other townships have any say in it?
I'll defer to the township solicitor.
Yeah, that's a question for you.
Actually, I'll offer this answer. As Mr. Non testified, the townships have a joint permit for the operation and maintenance of that traffic. Sorry. I'm not used to being told that people can't hear me. As Mr. Non testified on direct, the townships, Berwick, Oxford, and Hamilton have joint responsibility for the maintenance and operation of the traffic signal that was permitted since 1963 at the intersection of 94 and 30. So to the extent that there are agreements for changes to how that signal operates that are submitted to PennDOT for approval, they have to be jointly authorized by the three municipalities because they have that joint responsibility. Now, obviously, there are impacts onto municipal roads and township roads in those municipalities that may or may not have been addressed. Some of the study intersections are within the other townships. I do believe at some point, I thought that the TIS may have been submitted there, but I can't say that for certain.
I can say this. So the request for this project takes place within Hamilton Township. It's within our jurisdiction, and it's our purview, and it's this board's obligation to hear the application. The surrounding townships are aware of the application. They do have the right, if they were to choose to send representatives to attend these hearings. They would, as any other citizen in the audience, have a right to ask questions. And I know that some of the township supervisors from Oxford did attend at least the first couple meetings to find out what is going on here. But we're not required to defer to them or to formally allow them to be on a table here somewhere and ask questions, because it's, again, within this project's taking place within our township.
And I could also add that the other townships are also involved in the traffic impact study and the PennDOT proceedings for the highway occupancy permits.
I have some questions. Mr. Knott, are you saying, in your professional opinion, that anytime you have a warehouse that exceeds 200,000 square feet and 24 feet in height, you cannot apply the 150, what do we call this?
Land use code.
Land use code.
What I'm saying is that without any information as to the use of the warehouse, if you're building a warehouse of that size, above 200,000 square feet and 24 feet in height, you have to assume that it's going to be used at the best use, which could be a 155 sort facility. Now, if the applicant builds a 2 million square foot warehouse and provides detailed information about the use of that warehouse and the occupancy of that warehouse, sure, you could generate the traffic from another land use, but in the absence of any information from the applicant as to the use of that warehouse and the occupancy of that warehouse, if you're building a warehouse that meets the requirements of a high cube warehouse, then yes, you have to use the highest and worst traffic that could be associated with that warehouse, which would be a 155 sort facility.
Did I hear your testimony right, though, when you said that everybody uses the 150? I think, I'm paraphrasing.
That's been my experience, yes.
So how do you reconcile that then? If everybody's throwing 150 land use code in their traffic studies when they do these, isn't that the standard? I mean, isn't everybody going to use the 150?
I didn't say that all those were approved either.
Okay. All right, that's legit. Are we to understand then that this, is it your testimony that this 900-page, several $100,000 study is flawed because they used 150 as the basis for it?
As a foundation for a traffic impact study, you have to have an accurate representation of the traffic generated from the use. So yes, as the foundation for that traffic study, it needs some revision.
Okay. And are you saying that despite the intensity of the study, it does not meet the Hamilton Township zoning ordinance with respect to what you're supposed to give us as a traffic study? Is that your?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Did my questions generate any questions from you guys?
Before redirect or?
No, from these guys on cross. Then you could
Okay.
redirect.
All right.
Other than the kind of ambiguous worst-case scenario in quotes in the township ordinance, where does it say that the requirement would be to evaluate this as a 155 sort facility in the township code?
In the township code?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah, okay. No further questions.
Township, anything based on my questions?
No, thank you.
Redirect, Mr. Wolf?
Can you explain your answer, Mr. Non? Reconcile what you've just said, that the ordinance doesn't require 155 sort, but why do you think that that's appropriate?
Well, the ordinance doesn't have any land use codes in it. It doesn't say anything about any land use codes. It's appropriate because, again, this warehouse is built that it could accommodate a 155 sort facility.
Okay?
So that could be the use. Once it gets built and they get a certificate of occupancy, there's no control over what the use is going to be. So that somebody could come in and start a fulfillment center there that's a sort fulfillment center, and the traffic would not be what's called for in the traffic impact study.
As the industry of Amazon, FedEx, UPS, doing guaranteed deliveries and shorter turnaround times and other delivery services, is this a developing area where we are seeing more high cube sort facilities developing?
I'm going to object. While I do agree he's an expert in traffic, I don't know if he's an expert on regional land planning and future land planning for the area.
I can lay a foundation for the question.
Well, aren't we getting outside of the area of redirect also? We're not supposed to venture into new territory on redirect.
Well, the question that was asked was about the typical building size and what the other characteristics were, and I was trying to elicit testimony about why he was selecting 155 despite the
Okay,
criteria.
That's fair, go ahead.
I'll back up a little bit. You were asked about your experience in developing traffic studies or preparing traffic studies for uses of this nature. You said the last one was approximately 10 years ago?
Yes, sir.
In the intervening time period, how many have you reviewed?
Oh, 2 or 3 dozen?
Okay. And are they in Adams County? Or-
One in Adams County, another half dozen or so in Pennsylvania, 2 in Chicago, Illinois, 1 in Colorado.
Okay. And in your experience in looking at those, have you developed your opinion that you've offered tonight, you said is consistent with the ITE?
Yes, sir.
And you believe that your testimony tonight is consistent with the ITE's methodology of selecting the appropriate land use code?
Yes, sir.
Does the ITE require every characteristic to be present to select a land use code?
No, sir.
Okay. So is there some engineering discretion that's afforded to a professional like yourself or Mr. Schick in selecting the land use code?
Well, generally, the land use code selection would come from the applicant. What are you going to use the warehouse for?
So could you have a 100,000 square foot building that is at 155 even though the building size is smaller?
Yes,
It depends on what the use is.
it depends on the use.
Can you have a 1,000,000 square foot building that qualifies as a 150
Absolutely,
if you know the use?
if you know the use.
Absent the use being known specifically, then is it your testimony that you look at the characteristics of the building that most closely are associated with the typical features of the land use code
Yes, sir.
as you know them?
Yes,
Okay. And are the features of the land use code more important than the location or less? Relative to an urban area near an airport?
the features of the land itself and the building size are more important than any other feature,
And why is that?
because a building is going to house what the operation is, what the occupant will use, so.
Okay. And in reviewing the several dozen traffic impact studies for distribution centers over the last 10 years, have you noticed a trend in buildings of sort facilities that are not in urban areas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is it becoming more frequent or less?
More frequent, in fact.
Okay. You were asked some questions about that strike-off letter.
Yes, sir.
You've read it?
I have, sir.
Have you read any of the underlying study that was used to come up with that strike-off letter?
I have, sir. The strike-off letter cites the reference. There's a singular study that the strike-off letter was based on. It's cited in the strike-off letter itself, and it's readily available to anybody with access to the PennDOT network, which is pretty much any engineer. And I have reviewed that particular study also.
Okay. Is your review of that study and the resulting strike-off letter why you answered the question about PennDOT lacking credibility?
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate on why you take that position?
Sure. The study was performed in June of 2024. What it looked at was approximately 15 warehouses, mainly in central Pennsylvania between Harrisburg and Reading, which is, a growing area for these types of facilities.
The I-81-78 corridor?
Exactly, sir.
Okay.
It's within 65% of a day's drive of the population of the United States or something like that. I don't know what it is. But it's a popular place to put these things. Nonetheless, what it did was it actually went and studied and counted ultimately 14 of these sites. Of those 14 sites counted, only 2 were fulfillment centers. The rest were just general warehouses. In fact, the sizes of these facilities, over half of the ones that they counted, were less than 500,000 square feet. Well, in and of itself, that's great. I mean, fine. But what they did was they aggregated all that data together and reflected one trip generation, if you will, based on all 14 of those. So it's very diluted in respect to fulfillment centers. So the numbers that come out of that study, which generated that flow chart, are not really accurate, especially related to fulfillment centers. some things in that study that are not in the strike-off letter, notes, and I'll just read here from the study that was done in June of 2024. The 2 known fulfillment centers observed generated 76 to 176 more traffic.
Percent more traffic?
Percent more traffic than estimated in the approved traffic study on a weekday basis, and 32 to 54% more traffic during the weekday PM commuter peak hour. So based on PennDOT's own study, they know that the 155 is going to generate more traffic than the 150, but that's not reflected in the strike-off letter for some reason. There was also some other interesting things in the study that PennDOT did or had paid to do. It said that large parking fields may signify larger employee count for facility indicative of fulfillment centers. And then the other thing that was interesting was this idea of applying conditions. There seems to be this suggestion that we'll apply conditions once it opens, but that's not what the study says. What the study says is apply condition statements to potential end users. If the characteristics are not satisfactorily provided, or the development is considered speculative with no end user identified, consider applying condition statements to the highway occupancy permit that provide the department the ability to reevaluate traffic impacts, and this is where it's important, once an end user is identified. It doesn't say once it's approved, it doesn't say once it's occupied, it says once it's identified. So some reason we forgot that, and we just seem to say, okay, well, once it's approved, we'll just.
So the testimony that we've heard tonight talked about requiring a post-construction, post-occupancy condition.
Correct.
You're talking about once the building's been built?
It doesn't even say it, says once you've identified the end user.
So that could be before or after construction?
Could be before construction, yes. Ideally, it would be before construction.
And at that point, do a study based upon their proposed use, their specific use, and then you'd be able to better address what improvements would be necessary to offset the increased traffic generated.
Yes, sir.
So if I understood correctly, the sample size was 15 facilities?
They said 15, but they only used 14 of the 15 facilities, yes.
And of those 14, you said 2 were what we consider fulfillment centers. That's the 155 sort?
That's correct, sir.
And the balance?
Well, it says fulfillment centers. They didn't differentiate between 155 sort or non-sort. So they could have been non-sort facilities.
Okay. So this study over over whatever period of time looked at 14 facilities of a various type and essentially aggregated their impacts into one model.
That's correct, sir.
And do you find it odd that there was no provision that suggested using anything other than 150 or 154?
Well, when they aggregated everything together, obviously the trip generations, the actual trips that are associated with these warehouses were a lot closer to 150 than practically any other land use.
So essentially it knocked off everything but the bottom end of the bell curve.
Pretty much.
Is that a consistent manner of study to the ITE's
No, sir.
approach?
No, sir.
What's the difference?
Well, again, you can't aggregate land uses. You look at each specific land use. If it's a 155, it needs to be modeled as a 155. You can't say, well, of all these warehouses in central Pennsylvania, we came up with 150 is closer to everything else as an aggregate. Well, that's not how you look at warehouses. You got to look at what the specific use is. You know, and honestly, there's no room for what we call a speculative warehouse. You need to define the use in order to accurately generate the traffic. If you're not going to define the use and you want to have this warehouse that can accommodate anything, then you got to generate it as 155 sort.
So that's not even really talking about worst case. That's just if you don't know who the user is going to be, assume the most intense so that we can capture the impacts.
Exactly.
And if we capture the impacts, we can adequately address what the more farther reaching impacts are on the roadway network in the township.
Correct.
as to the off-site improvement requirement, what did you mean by that PennDOT doesn't require it?
Well, PennDOT, like municipalities, can't require it. It's done by negotiation. PennDOT can say, we're not going to approve your land use unless you do this. And generally, that negotiation occurs at the municipal level, not at PennDOT's level. And I speak from experience as a township supervisor for a multi-million-dollar development literally across the street from my house. We widened 3 miles of roadway from 2-lane to 3-lane at $15, $20 million worth of improvements, 3 new traffic signals, everything that's associated with them. PennDOT wouldn't otherwise grant the highway occupancy permit for this new development, but it was the township that negotiated these improvements, not PennDOT. Once the township negotiated the improvements, then PennDOT approved the highway occupancy permit. So yes, this was 2 miles of off-site improvements. There's no question they were off-site improvements, no question that it widened the road and added more signals, but it wasn't like PennDOT said, thou shalt do this. PennDOT says, you don't do this, we're not going to grant you the permit. So then that's negotiated by the municipality to get the improvements necessary, paid for by the developer, to approve this large land development.
So in other words, the answer is somewhat semantics. They can't require it, but they can condition approval on you satisfying the municipal requirements.
Or deny approval, yes.
Okay. Nothing further.
Okay. I have a little bit of recross here, just a question or two.
Any cross-exam based on the redirect?
Yeah. You mentioned about the condition for reevaluation, and that is part of the strike-off letter as well, that if the characteristics are not satisfactorily provided, or the development is speculative, with no end user identified, then once the end user is identified, that it would then get reevaluated, regardless of where you are in the permitting process. The permit could already be issued, or the permit, you could still be doing your review of the TIS, and at that point, an end user would be identified based upon whoever signs a lease, something like that, correct?
The PennDOT study upon which the strike-off letter is based says end user, doesn't have anything about construction timing or anything like that.
Correct.
And again, this is applicable to PennDOT highway occupancy permits. It's not a document that sets the standards for traffic control in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's just strictly for PennDOT's use in highway occupancy permits.
Correct. I don't disagree with that. If an applicant for a special exception before a township would, because the term warehouse as defined in the zoning ordinance is quite broad and could include any of the logistics facilities we're talking about. If an applicant would agree to a condition for in a special exception approval that it would that its tenant or end user would not be a sort facility, then 150 or 154 would be the appropriate 150, 154, or 155 non-sort would be the appropriate metrics, correct?
I don't know how I could write that, but I'm not an attorney. So if the attorneys could write a condition that would do that, I guess that could be appropriate. Yes, sir.
Okay. No further questions?
I have a question. So if the applicant meets the requirements that PennDOT imposes to get a highway occupancy permit, they follow the strike-off suggestions, they submit this, PennDOT is satisfied with it, and they give you an HOP. That, would you say that with respect to the Hamilton Township zoning ordinance, that granting or that approval for an HOP overrides the requirements of meeting our zoning ordinance?
No, actually, I would think it's the other way around.
Okay.
PennDOT HOP looks at factors for access to the state highway. They don't look at public health, safety, and welfare for the whole community. In fact, your standards should be overriding PennDOT standards. PennDOT doesn't set the standards for your traffic impact study. You set the standards. And PennDOT will generally accept whatever it is that you approve.
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right. You're excused.
Thank you.
All right. If I can have a brief moment, I'm going to try and, I want to make sure of who is here and who isn't to proceed. Can we have a minute or two
Go off
of
the
a break?
record for 4 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I'm just going to figure out which one I'm going to do next. Go ahead.
Do you want this?
Sure.
I want that. You don't need me to stay, do you?
I just need your bill.
You get
Get it to me. Thank you.
I never miss invoicing.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Can you come up here for a second?
Let me write down.
Well, you just tell me. I mean, is Chelsea here?
Yeah, she's right.
Okay.
Yeah, start with her.
I'll start with her, because she's the briefest. And then, well, you can text her, but what I was going to do is say, Jim is here, right?
Yep, Doug Fishel's here.
Doug Fischel is here.
Sherry's here. I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
He lives about where I do, the intersection of Woods and Forest.
Okay.
You doing all right?
Yeah, I just want, how many notices?
5-ish.
5-ish. And they're less than 10 minutes each. Where?
Good?
Yeah, you want to, I need, that's one for Chelsea.
That's pretty powerful. That truck's not where it's supposed to be.
No.
This was coming in the last hearing.
Who took these? You or your wife?
I took this one. So I was stuck in traffic. They're off Lawrence's Facebook page.
Well, yeah.
That was taken by
That doesn't matter. That one doesn't matter.
Which other ones do you know?
Tell you what. I'm getting these because I'm presenting these during her testimony.
This one, that's Jenna Shower.
Okay.
That's me.
Why don't you put them into...
That's me.
If I'm one of the two of you, then you take that picture, is it to accurately reflect? Okay, whether it's you or not. Right.
You don't want her.
Well, don't say her, because then it's a foundational question, it's an evidentiary issue. Can you organize these into packets that are, I should have told you that, and I didn't? That's my fault? Ah! Well,
What kind of packets?
like this.
Each one of the singles?
Yes, they're all the same one together. Uncollated. That's right. Where is Chelsea? I don't see her. Megan, your help. Trying to uncollate some of those photos for me. That way.
Okay, let's make our way back to our seats.
Chelsea's last name. Ross. Thank you. Oh, my brain is like shot right now. I can do it. Sure. Yep.
That's a start.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm good.
Good question.
Where should we go?
Chelsea.
Mr. Wolf, are you ready?
I am.
All right.
Oh, great.
It's just that one.
Mr. Schutte, are you ready? Okay. Township, are you good?
Yes?
All right, let's go. Mr. Wolf?
Our first witness is actually, I'm recalling for a very brief offer, Chelsea Ross. She had testified previously. She mentioned that she had had photographic evidence that she wanted to provide to the board that supported her contention about existing conflicts with her school bus traffic and existing truck traffic. So this will be a brief offer, but she is already under oath.
Yep, you're still under oath.
I'm going to show you, Ms. Ross, a photograph that I'm going to ask be marked as Objectors Exhibit 4. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
And now, you didn't take this picture, did you?
No.
Are you in this photograph?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us what that photograph depicts.
That is one of my stops on 194, picking up one of my students that I had a tractor trailer slide basically down the hill to try and stop, and he is right at passing my reds.
So you're stopped, you're in place, and you're picking up a student, and that tractor trailer was coming where? Was this located?
This was on 194.
194 or 94?
Or 94, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, 94.
And at Dix Dam Road, is that correct?
Close to Dix Dam Road. It's right out at the end of Green Ridge Road. It's between Green Ridge Road and Dix Dam Road.
Okay, and you said that you had your no pass lights on, that's the flashing lights on your bus?
Yes,
that
about
are
300 feet we put on our yellows, which obviously is indicating that we're stopping. And this particular child, there's always her father, grandmother, someone out that you can see where I am going to stop. And the tractor trailer just was not stopping, was going to try and blow through my yellows. And then I put on my reds because I stopped, and he slid right to where he is.
Okay, and at that point, is there a clear line of sight approaching where you were?
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yes.
and is it your testimony that is this an isolated incident that something like this has happened?
No, this happens every day.
Where you have vehicles, tractor trailers attempting to pass by while you're on yellow?
Yep.
And does that photograph truly and accurately represent the conditions that you're describing to the board tonight?
Yes, this is every single day, not just my bus, multiple.
Well, but from
Yeah.
your own experience, your testimony from your own experience, have you seen it happen with other buses? Is that, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So you're saying that this, it doesn't just happen to you when you're loading or unloading, but you have personally observed it happen with other buses as you're driving your bus?
Yes.
Okay. And was there anything else that you wanted to say, supplementing your testimony from before, that you did not get an opportunity to testify to previously?
Just the safety and the convenience of these kids. Like, I'm here strictly for the kids, and this is unsafe to have a warehouse of this size, to have this extra amount of vehicles. And the fact that I had mentioned before about the calling in for the 5 minutes late. There's little road construction right now in New Oxford that causes every single bus to be late. And now we're going to add 1,000, 2,000 trucks. That is not going to work. That is not going to work for Conewaga Valley School District, Hanover School District, Gettysburg School District. We have students we take to tech prep in Gettysburg. We go to the Catholic school. Like this, we have vehicles going every direction at Cross Keys. Cross Keys is the heart of our community, and this will ruin it, 100%.
Is there anything else that you wanted to offer as testimony?
No.
And I would offer this witness for cross.
Cross-examined by the applicant.
Just a question or two, Ms. Ross. Sorry, is this on? Sorry. Just a question or two, Ms. Ross. based upon your understanding, am I correct that a vehicle passing by you while you're on yellows or reds would be a violation of the motor vehicle code?
Yes, it's a violation.
Okay. Do you have the opportunity to call in license plate numbers that you see that would violate that?
Again, like I had said the last time we were here, and that question had come up, there's nothing done about it.
So then it's more of an institutional problem of law enforcement than a traffic problem?
No,
you'd say?
because the law enforcement wasn't the one who screwed up in the first place.
But if this was enforced, don't you, and if this was enforced and a trucker knew that he'd lose his CDL for doing this, don't you think that there'd be a little bit more caretaking?
No, not at all. Regular vehicles do this every day also.
And do you have an opportunity to call those in as well?
Yes,
And do you?
yes.
And but your experience has been that, but nobody listens to you?
Nothing is done about it within the court system. So that just reinforces it to these drivers that they can get away with it,
Correct.
is the point.
So the point. So then my point is that if this was in fact enforced, that it would happen less. Isn't that what you just testified to? That the fact that it's not enforced almost reinforces the bad behavior.
Again, if you're missing the point, sure.
I have no further questions.
Any cross by Township?
No, thank you.
Questions by the board? I don't have any questions. Mr. Wolf, does the cross generate any redirect?
No, sir.
This witness is dismissed.
Unnecessary.
Yep. All right. I am going to call Mr. Bivens. James Bivens, are you here, Jim?
Has Mr. Bivens testified before?
He has not.
Okay. Mr. Bivens, you have to be sworn in.
All right, sir, will you please state your full name for the record and your address?
James Bivens, 455 Woods Road, Abbottstown.
Okay, so you're a resident of Hamilton Township, correct?
Correct.
Okay, how are you employed, sir?
Currently, I'm employed by the Gettysburg Area School District as a school police officer and Lattimore Township as a patrol officer.
Okay, have you worked in any other law enforcement capacity before?
I am a retired Pennsylvania State Trooper.
Okay, and your testimony tonight is not in an official capacity as a sworn law enforcement officer, but based on your law enforcement experience. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us why you're here tonight and what your opposition is to the instant application?
I'm here because the increased amount of traffic is going to also increase response times for emergency services, police, EMS, fire. I worked in Lancaster County for quite a while, and if anybody's been up in the area where Dutch Wonderland and other places like that, the outlets, through there, the extensive traffic backlogs, I have experienced trying to respond to crashes, as well as other emergency incidents, and trying to make my way through that traffic. Getting a truck to hear your siren and see your lights is oftentimes impossible, and to get them to move out of the way is equally as frustrating. The only way around that was to try to go side roads, back roads, wherever we could to get around the congestion, and that oftentimes adds almost as much time to your response.
So have you taken a look at the sketch plan that the applicant submitted?
I have not, other than what they put up here that we could see.
Okay. Had you looked at the prior versions of it that were available in the township?
I did not see that.
Okay. But are you familiar? How long have you lived at your current address?
11 and a half years.
Okay. Have you seen increases in traffic volumes in your daily existence?
I can tell you if there's a crash at Cross Keys or somewhere between Woods Road and Cross Keys, or north of Cross Keys, southbound on 94, the amount of traffic that detours through there becomes extremely excessive.
Okay. But my question is a little bit more basic. I appreciate that observation, but general traffic volumes, just in your experience, as a police officer, do you pay attention to the traffic patterns and things like that on your own routes, even personally?
Yes, there has been, in that 11-year period, an increase in traffic as there's been more traffic due to developments that have been constructed in the area.
And have you seen increases in traffic on the township's local roads like Woods and Forest?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have specific concerns about additional trips being generated on those roads to avoid Cross Keys if this application were approved?
Absolutely. Those roads are not wide enough to handle or constructed well enough to handle the amount of traffic. There was a pothole on Forest Drive for so many months. It got big enough that it could cause severe damage to your vehicle if you ended up having to go through the pothole and couldn't go around it.
And right now, is there difficulty getting out from those intersections of Woods to Route 30 or Forest to 94 respectively? Is there difficulty entering those other roadways from those local township roads?
Yes.
And from your experience in law enforcement and from your experience in living in this area, do you think that that will be exacerbated by if the application is approved?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And is there anything else that you wanted to explain to the board as the basis for your objection to this application?
I would just ask you to consider what a 30-second delay could mean to you if you're having a heart attack and that ambulance can't get to you, or one of your loved ones. What that delay means if your barn or your house is on fire, or any number of other emergency situations. The applicant said that concerns of health, safety, and welfare are the reason to deny the application. The amount of congested traffic in that area creates that concern.
I have no other questions for.
Redirect, I'm sorry, where are we? Cross-exam.
Mr. Bivens, just have one question for you. Your concern is in part based upon the existing conditions of the road? Is that correct? That what you're testifying to is there's already an existing condition that's causing issues with the roads, correct?
While there are times when there's congestion, there's not congestion to the extent that you can't go through that intersection at 30 and 94 or get around traffic on 94 if you need to, if you're responding to an emergency call. However, you increase that traffic by 1,000 to 4,000 vehicles, that's going to make a huge difference. You're going to almost be creating a parking lot.
And just to be certain, while we did hear from Mr. Non, you are not a traffic engineer?
No.
Okay. No further questions.
Any cross-exam by the township?
No.
Any redirect based on cross-exam?
Just one question. Mr. Schutte just asked you if you're a traffic engineer, but you have worked in law enforcement for an extended period of time, correct?
Correct.
And you rely on a roadway network as a law enforcement member to respond efficiently and effectively to any number of types of emergencies?
Yes, and I've
Did-
also investigated multiple crashes that occurred not only at intersections, but at the mid-block sections of these highways.
Okay. And hearing Mr. Naun's testimony tonight and the concerns previously raised on cross-examination or through the township's traffic engineer, are you more concerned based on that testimony as to what the impacts will be on the local roadway network?
I'm going to object. He doesn't have the foundation to answer this question.
Sure he does.
Well, give me your argument.
The argument is it doesn't take, if his testimony were not reliant on what other expert
He's not an
witnesses-
expert.
Let him give me his argument. Go
His
ahead.
opinion testimony is relevant to whether or not he has a concern that is based on the testimony of an expert that has presented to this board. He is allowed to draw conclusions from that. He is offering his testimony as a local resident. The case law is pretty clear.
He can
If you don't-
testify what his concerns are as a Hamilton Township resident. Yes, go ahead.
So, what is your concern reinforced by the testimony you've heard?
Yes.
I have no other questions for Mr. Bivens tonight.
Any cross based on that?
Nope.
Township? Questions from the board before I dismiss them? You're dismissed.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Fischel, Doug Fischel, you available? There he is. He has not testified before, so he is going to need to be sworn in.
I do.
All right, sir. Can you identify yourselves, first and last name and address, please?
Douglas Fischel, 760 Berlin Road, New Oxford, Hamilton Township.
All right. And can you tell the board why you are here tonight, what it is that you would like them to be aware of as to your opposition to the instant application?
Back when the traffic study was introduced, the accidents were listed as reportable only, and there was 3. That was the testimony. I did some research and found out that there's a lot more accidents than that.
Can you tell us this? What do you do professionally?
I'm a retired firefighter. I work part-time as a police officer here in Eastern Adams and Gettysburg as well. I've been a police officer for many years.
Okay. And in that capacity, did you have access to personal knowledge of incidents or crashes that have occurred in the study area?
Yes.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm a first responder here with the United Hook and Ladder. We handle the 11 municipalities around the area here, including Hamilton. Cross Keys at 94 and 30 is one of our busiest intersections, and we respond there quite a bit for crashes, mid-block as well as at the intersection. I've also investigated many accidents in Eastern Adams, which is Oxford Township out there, as part of my employment.
Okay. And how would you characterize the assessment of there being 3 reportable crashes?
I think there probably was 3 reportable crashes.
Do you think there were more?
But we respond to a lot more than reportable crashes. In Pennsylvania, a reportable crash means it rises to having to be towed or injuries. There's a lot more crashes than that we respond to and the police respond to that don't rise to the level of a reportable accident in the state of Pennsylvania.
So it's having to be towed or?
Personal injury.
Or personal injury. And is there a gradation of what constitutes personal injury? Whether or not it requires hospital treatment versus on-scene treatment?
On-scene would be enough.
Okay. And so do you take issue with the notion that there are only 3 reportable crashes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any indication of, in a one-year period, of how many there may have been in the study area?
Yes, from January 1st of '23 to 12/31 of '23. This is the data from United Hook and Ladder. We were dispatched 25 crashes in that catchment area of Route 94 and 30 for a total of 30 man-hours. But we had, I'm sorry, 25 crashes is what United Hook and Ladder responded to.
Are they the first due?
Emergency services?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
For fire, rescue, and ambulance?
The ambulance is now a third service, which is Adams Regional EMS, which is stationed here at our station as well, yes.
Okay, so does it encapsulate their runs as well?
Yes.
Okay. And is there, so 25 versus 3?
Right, I have additional data as well from other agencies that it's public information.
Okay.
Pennsylvania State Police Gettysburg Barracks reported a 55 number of crashes, non-reportables, 40 were reportable.
Okay.
Data from Eastern Adams Regional was 7 reportables and 28 non-reportables.
Okay. So as the, that data is analyzed in terms of the frequency of crashes, do you have a concern over whether or not those numbers have been underreported as part of the analysis by the traffic engineers?
Well, it has been underreported. I don't want to point a finger at why they may have done that. I don't want to speculate, but that is the data that is available from PennDOT. When you say this is the intersection I want to draw data from, and those are the reportable accidents that they came up with.
And again, that time frame was the calendar year 2023?
Yes.
Okay, so that excludes 2024 and anything earlier than 23?
Right, I just went with a 12-month period.
Okay, and it was your review of the original crash data that was submitted that in that period there were 3 reportable crashes that were identified?
That's what was testified to with the traffic study.
Okay. Taking that concern, are there concerns that you have that you want the board to be aware of in a more practical sense on a day-to-day basis? Were there other worries that you had?
Well, the resources are thin with volunteers to start with. If we start running more calls because of the increase in traffic and in potential for increase in crashes, which may or may not be reportable, most of them might be just rear-end type crashes because of the congestion, yes, it's going to increase the ability of us to do our jobs here with United Hook and Ladder.
If this facility were approved, would United Hook and Ladder be the first due engine company? Does United Hook and Ladder have a ladder truck?
Yes.
Would it be able to accommodate a facility? Would your equipment and apparatus be able to accommodate a facility of this size?
That would depend on the fire protection systems in that building. If it's sprinkler, probably. If it gets out of hand, we're going to have to call for a lot of mutual aid.
Okay. What if there were hazardous materials stored on site or even in small quantities like batteries?
United Hook and Ladder is a, excuse me, operations only hazardous materials. We go in and stabilize the scene, make sure people are safe. We do not do hazmat.
So you do not have a technical hazmat response team?
We do not. We would have to call out of county to have them handle that and mitigate that situation.
Okay. Does that include fuel spills from diesel vehicles?
We can handle that. There's a fuel spill trailer up at the County 911 Center that Adams County actually owns when we get into a lot of fuel that we need to pick up with stay dry, that kind of thing.
Okay. And is there a concern, do you share the concern that Mr. Bivens indicated over response times if traffic volumes are increased even in the manner that is predicted by the applicant?
Yes, I do. I have a personal anecdote, if I can add that. We had a really bad crash up on 94, right past Pine Run Road. 17-year-old was out with his permit, drifted to the left, the tractor trailer ran over him. Basically took out the entire side of the car. Traffic was backed up forever. I ended up putting 2 tourniquets on his arm and his leg. That 17-year-old bled out till we got an ambulance there. Okay, when you have a 17-year-old bleed out in your arms, that's something you don't get over. And if we have an increase in response time, like Mr. Bivens said, even 30 seconds, 40 seconds, it makes a difference. And we're running lots of these calls and seeing more and more injuries.
Are you concerned that an increase in tractor-trailer traffic would exacerbate an already existing problematic intersection?
It will, because it's been my experience on the road as a police officer, a lot of these truck drivers are not as professional as they used to be. They're not as safe as they used to be. They're being pushed against their hours to make the runs. They're driving exhausted or over their hours, and it just is an unsafe situation.
And that's from firsthand experience?
That is from firsthand experience, investigating accidents and watching doing the traffic citations on these motor vehicles.
Okay. Do you have anything else you wish to answer?
No, I don't. Thank you.
I offer him for cross.
Cross-exam.
Yeah. Mr. Fischel, you'd mentioned that that the traffic impact study said that there are only 3 accidents. Where did you get that information?
I read it.
Did you ask your attorney to read the table 2 of the traffic impact study that was provided?
I don't have access to that now, no.
Okay, well,
What exhibit are you referring to?
I'm referring to, it could be, I think it's whatever the traffic impact study is now. I believe it's Applicant's Exhibit 34.
Bring it up.
I believe that's correct.
Is there a page number?
Find my copy here.
It is
As
34.
soon as I find it here. Page 4 and page 5. Would you agree that that table purports to report, or purports to state all of the reportable crashes from 2018 to 2022 at the different intersections and also along the 2 segments of York Road and Carlisle Pike?
Yes?
Where on there does it say that only 3 were reported?
I was talking about the year that I reported my data.
So where in the traffic impact study does it say that there was only 3 crashes reported?
I don't know.
That was your testimony.
That's what the testimony was here whenever you introduced the traffic study back then.
You said you just read the traffic study, though.
No, I read it. That's not what I said.
Okay. So in any event, is there any reason to believe that these numbers are incorrect?
No, there's no reason to believe they're incorrect.
Okay.
It's data.
I have no further questions.
Any cross by the township?
No.
Redirect?
Sir, what testimony are you referring to when you related to the board that you had heard testimony about 3 crashes?
There was the reportable crashes that was brought up whenever they introduced the traffic study.
Okay, and was that in the March hearing, the first hearing that?
It would have been very close to that, yes.
Okay. So it was your recollection that there was testimony as to 3 reportable crashes. Was it at a specific intersection, or do you remember what the context was?
Yes, Route 30 and 94 to Kroski's intersection. If I remember correctly, that was the only intersection that they studied. And for,
All right. Respectfully, folks, just the record is going to be very mishmashed if there are voices in the background, so please.
so that's my recollection, but
Okay. So you're offering that testimony to the board based on your recollection of oral testimony presented in this case?
yes.
Okay. Had you reviewed the original crash data that was submitted with the first version of the traffic impact study?
I think I had that emailed to my phone, yes.
Okay.
That's how I think I saw that.
Was that the last version that you had read through?
I have not seen anything since, no.
Okay. All right. So it's been some time since you had reviewed that. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And your testimony isn't being offered to mislead the board as to the amount of crashes. That was based on solely your recollection. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Any cross-exam to that?
No.
Board, any questions before I dismiss this witness? You're dismissed.
Thank you.
just a brief moment of the board's indulgence. I'd like to call Sherry Keller. I will only have one remaining witness after Ms. Keller testifies.
I do.
All right. Can you please state your name and first and last name and state your address?
My name is Sherry Keller, and I live at 39 Rolling Lane in Hamilton Township.
Okay, and can you tell the board why you are here tonight, what you want them to be aware of as to your opposition to this project?
The opposition to this project is, one, Rolling Lane is directly to Woods Road. I have lived at this property for 48 years. We went from a very quiet road to a very busy road. There's been a lot of traffic accidents at the golf course lately where it shuts down the road. They come back Woods Road, go out to Forest Drive, but a lot of people have discovered Rolling Lane. On both ends of Rolling Lane, it is a 2-lane blacktop road. As soon as you get past our property to the farm behind us, it becomes a 1-lane cow path. People are not aware of that. We had tractor trailers coming into our neighborhood. The one neighbor at the one end of the road, his whole yard was destroyed, property line, because we had tractor trailers. And as someone else stated, the truck drivers of today aren't the same as 20 years ago. How do I know that? My dad drove truck all his life. The guys now do not know how to read a map. They use their car GPS, which is going to take them back Rolling Lane. Signs were put up by the township, but if you go on the end of Brugge Road, you do not hit that no semi trucks till you hit the cow path. And by then, the tractor trailer 53 feet could not get back. So that road cannot take it. Neither can Wood or Forest. And you can tell immediately when there's something going on either of those roads. And as I stated, it was very quiet. For 48 years, we could get out onto 30 or 94 within minutes. There is times I have to sit and wait 10 minutes to get out Woods Road to 30, which is unacceptable. We have buses now coming back our road to avoid the construction. They're coming out one of the side streets at Lincoln Speedway, coming back Woods, going out to Forest to miss all that construction at Cross Keys because they can't get out. They can't cross the lanes. That's not safe for those kids. So we have gone from a very rural township to, we put this in and we don't know what it's going to be. We have no clue. We keep hearing it might be this. I have a trucking background. I worked for a company for 7 years. I had one of the biggest warehouses in the area as a customer. When they were built in Thomasville, they did not expect to have the volume they have. Within the first year, they were 2 miles off the road. They had tractor trailers lining up from their facility, clear out 30, clear down towards the Rudders at 616. Drivers sat there for at least 24 hours, running out of hours. They immediately were told by the township, you need to fix this. They widened their interest in 4 lanes and started bringing more in by rail. This facility can't have rail. There's no train tracks near it. So we heard that it could be a warehouse. A warehouse, we store stuff and we ship stuff out. We've heard it could be a terminal. A terminal is where it's one trucking company. They bring their own trucks in. It's normally their staffs there and garages. We heard it's a distribution center. If it's a distribution center, there's going to be hundreds of trucks in and out. We're going to hear those doors slamming every time they pull them from the dock. And I know you're saying, oh, you're on Rolling Lane. Abbottstown just put a warehouse in town 2 miles from me. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I hear the doors slamming. I hear the jockey trucks. I hear the tow meters, and I see the lighting. So a project this size, that is probably 5 times the size of that project, is going to have an impact. So it depends on what it is. I mean, we're not being told what's going to go in there. If it's something that's lithium batteries, do we want that hazardous material sitting there? We don't know. So I am really concerned about the safety of the community, the structure of what our community is. You know, we're a small township. Our taxes are relatively reasonable compared to everybody else because we don't have a police force. The cows tend to behave themselves. We don't need a police force. You know, our township's been very good about the way they spend money. So why do we want to add this that's going to increase traffic on these small roads that can't handle it? Crime is going to go up. You have more people and crime's going to go up. Traffic's going to go up. There's going to be more accidents. The fire department that's volunteer is now going to have to become a paid department because they're not going to be able to handle the volume of this stuff. So it's going to change the landscape of a township that most of us have lived in all of our lives. So that's why I'm here. Sorry for the lengthy.
Nope. I have nothing else further from the witness. Offer of recross.
Cross-exam?
No cross.
Cross-exam, Township.
Nothing.
Questions by the board? You're dismissed.
Thank you. All right, and finally, I'll call Ryan Fox. All right, can you identify yourself for the record? State your first and last name and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Ryan Fox. I live at 600 Forest Drive.
And Mr. Fox, so relative to the property location, are you north and east?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And can you tell the board, much like your the other objectors, can you give the board generally in your own words why you're here in opposition?
Yeah, I think this plan doesn't belong where it's proposed. You know, warehouses belong where there's easy access to a 4-lane highway, 81, 83, 15, 78, you know, you name it. In our area, we've heard about the traffic. I've done my own little research on traffic, which maybe we'll get to. I'm worried about air pollution too. We haven't talked about that. Houses like ours are about a half mile downhill from the warehouse. You look at the topography of the land, it's on the high ground. The elevations are 550, 560 according to the maps on the plan. Forest Drive and Woods, where the majority, and even Berlin, the objectors, including myself, live, we're downhill. So that means air's going to come down off that. Okay, fine. The lighting is going to be elevated. I don't need to see that glare when I'm sitting on my front porch. Right now, I don't. And I don't want to hear the sound of 24/7 beeps and banging and everything else. We don't deserve that here. It's going to be loud. It's going to have a negative impact on the character of our community and on our health and safety. I live right at the intersection, basically the intersection of Forest and Woods. Forest wasn't studied. Woods wasn't studied. If I go out past Mr. Bivens' house, pass and wave to a few other neighbors coming up that way that have already been up here at the table. When I come out to Woods on 30, to my left is Abbottstown. Also to my left, immediately to my left, is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. You're coming from 35 to 55 as Woods comes out on 30. If I go to make a left, I have traffic coming from the bridges into Abbottstown. It's very difficult. If I make a right, that is right where traffic's speeding up from the 35 to 55 and the passing lanes start. That's pretty difficult as it is. That's very difficult. Coming out on Forest, I think the majority of people who travel 94 and try to turn onto Forest have experiences like mine, where our lives have been put at risk. I came home from basketball practice January, about 9 o'clock. We got done at 8:50. I coached my kids' basketball team. We were almost rear-ended by a tractor trailer as I was coming south on 94, trying to make a left on Forest. There's nowhere to go. I saw the lights a couple of feet behind my car stop, and the skid marks were probably, I don't know, 15, 20 feet long. I couldn't go right. That's where the truck was going to swerve. I couldn't go left. I was stuck in traffic because there was so much traffic at that point in time. It's a dangerous intersection. I don't want anyone to have to experience that. So there's some of the reasons why I'm opposed. Okay. So a couple of other things that concern me is when we look north, south, east, and west. So if you pull out on 94 from the proposed entrance exit and head north on 94, you have to go through Hampton. Hampton Circle is very difficult, okay? Question came up about others. It's been in other minutes that there's a concern about loud brakes and also negotiating that curve. Further north, before you get to 15, what do you pass? You pass Bermudian Springs School District, which is very close to Route 94. If a shortcut's used and a truck tries to go down Berlin off 94, what do they go past? They go past our school district, our high school and our elementary school. And if you've had a kid that you drop off at Carline morning or afternoon lately, I guess you pick them up in the afternoon, it's not the easiest negotiation through there as it is now. If a truck comes out through 30 trying to get to Route 15, heading through New Oxford, they're negotiating that traffic circle. That's a tough traffic circle now to get that way. And if they're going towards York trying to get through the mess of Abbottstown with those houses as close as they are in that traffic circle, it's going to be very difficult. There's no room to expand. So I'm worried this is, it's a plan that would be fine just in another location. It doesn't fit the character of our community.
Have you heard testimony in the course of these proceedings? Have you observed traffic patterns that are inconsistent with what you've heard in terms of where trucks go right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Was there testimony about how the tractor-trailer traffic is not utilizing the local township roads, Berlin Road or Forest Road?
Yes.
And have you made observations of evidence to the contrary of that?
What does that mean?
Have you seen examples where that is not the case, where tractor-trailers are using local roads?
Yes.
Okay. And did you take photographs of some of those examples to illustrate to the board what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's going to be marked as objectors exhibits 5 and 6, and I'm going to pass out copies of these, and I will ask you, as I hand them out, to identify what they are. So, I'm going to ask that objectors 4 be the one that has March 2024 written on it, and objectors 5.
I think it's 5.
Excuse me, 5 and 6. Can you tell me what objectors number 4 is?
5.
Excuse me, 5. I'm stuck on 4. No, 5.
So March 2024, I was stopped trying to pull out onto 94 in front, and there was an 18-wheeler using Forest Drive as a shortcut, trying to turn right at that intersection. That is me.
So that tractor trailer is traveling westbound on Forest from the direction of Woods towards 94, and you caught up to it as it was stopped at 94?
Yes.
Is that an isolated occurrence, or is that just the only example you got on a photograph of?
It's not isolated. It's frequent.
Okay. And does it truly and accurately reflect the circumstances that you've just described?
Yes.
All right. Objector 6, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I was coming to one of our hearings, which was on June 26, 2024. You can see traffic stopped. That is a vehicle traveling north on 94, attempting to make a left onto Berlin to head west on Berlin Road for some reason. That's the road that goes back to the school district. He had to, he
Now,
or
you
she,
referred to it generally as a vehicle. Is that an 18-wheel tractor trailer with a 53-foot trailer on it?
yes,
Okay, and that is attempting to make a turn from northbound 94 onto Berlin Road. It's making a left turn from the through travel lane across the left turn lane, and it looks like it is off the road on the on the southbound side.
that's correct.
Okay, can you tell us what you observed after that?
Yes. The truck had to back up and, I don't know, 3 or 4 times try to negotiate the turn, which it was able to after running up onto the yard and almost clipping the fence.
So, and traffic is backed up in front of you between you and that tractor trailer?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that there was additional traffic backed up behind you?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, and did you take that photograph?
Yes.
And did you observe the circumstances after that truck cleared the intersection?
Yes.
Was there considerable backup coming southbound after he had cleared the intersection?
Yeah, you can actually see a car light in between the tractor and the trailer. There's a little yellow there.
Okay.
That's traffic in the opposite direction. That was having trouble getting through.
But that certainly wasn't the only vehicle that was stopped. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say.
And does that truly and accurately reflect the circumstances that you've just described?
Yes.
Okay. So, is it limited to traffic, what you are, your concerns that you are testifying to tonight, or are there other claims that were made as to the nature of, for instance, Pine Run?
Yeah, so we heard earlier about some of the water courses coming off these properties. They form Pine Run, which runs behind the edge of our property and eventually runs to the Conewago and the Susquehanna, I guess. That creek doesn't dry up. It's not seasonal. It's year-round. Even right now, there's enough water in it that I spoke at the Township meeting the other night about trucks that were working at Crosskeys pulling water out of it because they said it's a good spot for them to use. One of my concerns is runoff, and I know there's stormwater that goes with land development, things like that, but anything like that's going to change out waterway where my kids play. You know, there's crayfish, snakes, hawks, all kinds of things down there that they get into. And I'm worried about pollution coming off there. I have no idea if this could impact wells or not. But these are year-round creeks. They show up on maps through their floodplains, things like that. So I want to make sure it's clear that these are not just seasonal waterways.
And are there some, were there some resources that you looked at to reinforce that point?
Yeah, there were pictures actually posted coming across the properties of a couple of the folks involved here trying to sell their properties that show in September the waterway, and also I believe in the spring, yeah, around Easter time on the waterways too.
I just handed you 2 documents. The first one's going to be Objector 7. It has the name Luann Lawrence at the top, and the second one has more of a black banner at the top. 7 is the one that we'll refer to as Luann Lawrence. What's that depict?
So these are that were presumed to be seasonal type creeks through the properties that form Pine Run that runs through our property. So there's water running through them all the time.
Okay. And so 7 is a screenshot of the image from Ms. Lawrence's own Facebook page?
Yes.
And what is objectors number 8?
Same thing.
also from hers,
Yes.
from the same time of year?
No.
Okay, can you be a
Yeah.
little more specific?
One is from March, so that would be spring, and one is September, so late summer, heading into fall around Labor Day.
And did those images, you took those from her site, but you recognize the topography and the terrain there?
Sure, yes.
And does that appear to be one of those creeks that forms Pine Run?
Yes,
And that is the same water course that crosses your property?
yes,
And the one that you've testified that you are concerned that will bring stormwater, polluted stormwater runoff onto your property?
yes.
Okay. Now, having said that, does the county, did you take a look at any of the county's mapping imagery as to those water courses as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Board's indulgence for just a moment. These are the last groups of exhibits that I have for you. Okay. Again, two images of for to distribute here. We're going to mark these as, I believe, 9 and 10. The first one is watershed resources cost, and that'll be objectives 9, and the flood map as number 10. Sorry, I didn't do the greatest job of collating in advance. Mr. Fox, can you tell us where you obtained these images from and what they depict?
Yeah, the first one shows waterways running through these properties. It's just from Adam's GIS maps. There's an easy way to find those things through the county website.
This was the watershed resources map that you found on the county's website?
That's correct.
And does it show the area of Cross Keys at the bottom left-hand corner?
It does.
And does it show the various small tributaries that form Pine Run?
It does.
And is that a true and accurate reflection of the imagery that you found on the township's or the county website?
Yes.
Okay. The other exhibit is, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, that is a FEMA floodplain map.
And did you retrieve that as a matter through public record website?
Yes.
Okay, and what does it depict?
It takes those water courses and shows the flooding that comes through there as it moves through the area where the floodplain mapping is done.
And it shows an average depth anywhere from 0 to 3 feet depending on the area, but that includes those water courses that you have expressed concerns over.
That's correct.
And those are the not seasonal, those that you've described as not seasonal but constantly running waterways.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anything else you want the board to be aware of in terms of your concerns over this application or its impact on the area?
No, anything else would be redundant with what we've already heard.
Then I will offer him for cross and move for the admission of those exhibits, I believe, starting with the 4 through 10. If I got them right.
Any objections to objectors exhibits 4 through 10?
No.
Township?
No.
Those will be admitted. Cross-exam?
None.
Cross-exam?
No.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Fox? Mr. Fox, you're dismissed.
Thank you.
With that, the objectors rest in.
Rebuttal witnesses, applicant.
I don't have any rebuttal witnesses. I believe the township wants to present something first, and then we'd like to testify to it, what the township's presenting, as a rebuttal.
Township, what do you have?
Sure. So what we put together is, in writing, a list of what the township believes might be some reasonable conditions should the board choose to approve this application. So I have them in writing. I'm happy to read them out loud verbatim, if that's what you'd like, or however you want me to handle it.
I think it's fine if you give everybody copies and offer them to the board for
So
consideration.
council, I'll have a copy already, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Nate, do you have a set?
My co-counsel would like to address it.
What's the basis for you to present conditions as testimony?
So it's not testimony. Typically, at the end, there would be some argument, and I guess this would really be in lieu of that. And this is all based on the testimony that has been presented by all witnesses, really.
So you would consider that part of your closing argument?
That's correct.
I mean, we're going to have opportunity for written submittals. I think that what she's saying, this is part of the township's written submittal at the end. I'm okay with it. I mean,
I would just want to have on the record that the applicant would agree to these conditions should the board approve the application.
any further concerns before I take them?
Is this their argument, or we're going to have argument later?
We're going to have an opportunity to submit written closing statements and proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
And that's where this is relevant.
That's, I guess she's saying that's part of hers. It's submitted early.
Knock yourself out.
I did.
Thanks. All right, so,
Is that being identified as an exhibit?
no, it's just going to be part of closing argument documents. All right, so just so everybody in the audience understands, we're going to close the testimony. We're going to recess this hearing to a later date where the board will come back in session and render its decision. We're going to pick that date here in a minute. In the interim, between that, we're going to have an opportunity, as allowed by law, for the board to have an executive session with me as their legal counsel for legal advice. And we'll pick that date separate.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I see some folks getting up. Are you going to allow public comment?
We already had the public comment portion of it.
The only concern I had is that that public comment occurred, that some of that public comment has occurred prior to even the record being developed, that individuals couldn't have an opportunity to speak to. We've gone late, and I think a lot of these folks had been of the impression, as had I, that that was not the only opportunity for public comment that would be offered, that it would have been done at the close of testimony. I can understand if you don't want to hear from the same individual again, but I would think that those who haven't previously addressed the board.
I mean, I'm okay with some limited public comment if it's not redundant of traffic. We've heard traffic, we heard school bus, we've heard noise, we've heard lighting. I mean, what's left?
Well, I'm just saying that those folks, that the purpose behind public comment is so that those individuals in the public that are not parties can express themselves to the board. I understand if you want to have some limitations on it in terms of time, but, these folks have been very patient through the process, and I'm not suggesting that you're trying to shortchange them, but I think that their expectation, I know mine, was that there would be an opportunity for public comment at the close of the testimony.
Are there folks that haven't given a public comment that have stuff they want to say that doesn't revolve around traffic and school buses and all of that stuff? There's not that many. All right, we'll limit a public comment for till 9:30. So if you have something you want to say, come up. Give your name and address to the stenographer.
Hey.
Hello, thank you. My name is Donald Forrest. I live at 54 Peace Circle. I live in the Cross Keys Brethren community. And a problem that I know we've discussed a lot of things around this whole issue, but we live in an elderly community, and it's always some type of problem with us getting out slow and dangerous. And I think it's bad enough now. I'm just saying that this whole issue impacts every bit of life for everybody here, coming and going at some point during the day. So you have a lot of elderly people trying to get on there, and it's been pretty dangerous at times. I've seen it myself, and I've tried to get out. And the more compound the things, but we're trying to get a traffic light at Brickyard Road, and I think now that that's starting to work. But people are dodging. I'll tell you, when I go to East Berlin, I go to Forest Drive. You know why? It's so bad, but I love the gentle drive of Forest Drive to get out there in PP Town and all that. I take all the back roads because the traffic's so bad. And I have people on my tailgate that are cutting through, which I imagine. I love the countryside. I came from Baltimore County, and the traffic in Baltimore County is insane. This was such a breath of fresh air. And it's still good, but if it gets any worse and people keep cutting through, like these people have talked about in their properties, and I know where his property is, it's very nice. But at the same time, I think this would change the whole community. The project, it is what it is. It just doesn't belong here. Thank you.
Hi, Jamie Fitzpatrick, 422 Onyx Road in Oxford Township. Jamie Fitzpatrick, 422 Onyx Road in Oxford Township. Just a couple of comments. One of my concerns is about the level of detail and the concern about detail. I don't see the level of detail and concern of it from the applicant that I'd like to see to ensure that they're really trying to make sure that they're okay with the community. We've had numerous reschedulings. We've had property that they didn't have ownership rights to that was part of the plan. We had the lighting issue that came up tonight. We have the assumption that if I go with the PennDOT scoping, that negates the ordinances. Numerous issues like that give me concern that we're not really covering what needs to be covered to protect the community. The decision to use land use 150, in my mind, is a deliberate lowballing. If you build and design a building that's capable of being used for 155 land use, you're doing that to expand your marketplace, to be able to draw in potential users of the facility that would use it that way. So I don't see how you can design a building for that use and not include the impact of that traffic. And I currently, when I come back and forth from York, I'll always go on Route 30. I'll be using all the back roads, and so will everybody else. So there's going to be massive implications, and anybody that's been at that intersection with the turn radiuses there, we heard 4,000 vehicles potential for a 155. I'll reiterate what others have said. It might be a fine idea to bring a business in the area, but this isn't the place for it, and this isn't the community for it. Thank you.
I bet you can hear me. William Popovich, I live about 4 miles south of here, 36 Franklin Drive. First of all, I am not pleased that we were going to skip over public comment. I've been to 6 of these meetings. I guess there's been more than that. And I clearly heard over and over, we're going to have public comment. And now, okay, well, there's a line. There's pretty much unanimous unhappiness in this region that they don't want this. My frustration is we sit through at least 30 hours of heavy-duty legalese, heavy-duty technical, and we never even think that maybe we ought to ask the township people and the people within 10 miles of this what they want. I never got my 6x9 postcard that said, "Dear resident, dear taxpayer, what would you like to see at the 30 and 94 intersection?" Everybody agree with that? So, yeah, you have a room full of angry, angry, angry people. Look what happened 2 nights ago. America's pretty angry. I'm angry. The Commonwealth is angry. It bothers me that we have to listen to all these detailed stuff, chapter and verse out of all these different, codes and whatnot. And when it's time for those of us who have to live here and pay the taxes, it's, well, we really don't want to hear from you. And you know what? You really don't. I've been sitting through zoning hearings for decades, too many years, like 40 years, and I watched beautiful America, our countryside, turn from rural into what we have now. So we just disregard community. The last census I looked, there was, 2,700 people in the township? Within 10 miles of here, I looked at that census number, there's about 100,000 souls. I don't ever remember being queried about what I would like to see at that intersection. And we've listened to this. The intersection is that's the most clogged intersection in all of Adams County, and we're going to add to the traffic burden? Are we insane? I think that's insane. I'm getting a little angry about it, but yeah, we have to listen. I've been here, this is the 5th or 6th meeting. I'm getting real tired of it. I couldn't produce an idea like this and expect to be, not be laughed out of the room. So, if you had queried all the people in this, within 10 miles of here, you would have probably come up with 95% saying, you got to be out of your mind if you think that it's appropriate to put another warehouse that could choke the intersection. And we've listened to all the testimony. I've listened to the technical. I have an engineering degree. I have a master's degree in ocean engineering. I'm not a traffic guy, but doggone it, I use that intersection 4 or 5 times a week, and I suffer with it like everybody else does here. So you are looking at some very, very angry people. And I talked to my corporate friends who proposed this thing. I don't remember hearing from corporate, what does the community want? The community doesn't want this. I'm tired of being an American where corporate and government just gives me the finger and said, it's all about our money, and you don't count for a damn thing. Good night.
Hi, Teresa Helwig, 3615 Carlisle Pike. Right, 94, right at the end of Berlin Road. So I appreciate all the detail, all the discussion of the formulas and everything else. However, that just leads to the basis of the theoretical foundation for which all these people base their arguments. It's valuable, it needs to be said. However, the reality is much different from theory. So, historical reality of the stretch of 94 from, say, 700 Road down to Hanover Street. 5 young teenagers, the New Oxford 5 at 700 Road. Multiple crashes, always, at Gun Club Road and Pine Run Road. I'm not an engineer, I'm a nurse. I have a box at my front door with emergency supplies to take and run, because that's how frequent it is. We have, one time, I helped a woman hold a kid's head as he was agonal and gurgling. Cross Keys is always a mess, and Lord forbid if the lights go out, because then there's accidents. Where do they bring all that traffic around? Down Berlin Road to that horrible intersection to try to bring all that traffic out. Further down, Red Hill Road, I think it was an entire family wiped out. Down at Hanover Street, I think parents lost their only 2 kids, a brother and sister. The topography of that road is horrible, leads to terrible accidents as it is. The increase in traffic over the years has only made it worse. Now, real day. The trucks that come down through there, especially north heading south to Cross Keys, if they have had enough near misses, I can tell you what they started doing is they start laying on their horns from the crest of the hill coming up on Pine Road. They lay on their horns nonstop the whole way till they get past my house and start to head up the other hill to warn everybody to get the hell out of their way, because they aren't slowing down. And that's only after near misses. You have school buses, so they do that to warn people to move. Guess what? The school buses, especially for kids, they can't book it like cars try to. You sit there and you think you're safe, and you still have to book it, and because cars come over top that hill. It's insane. It's been bad for a long time. It's only getting worse. And not unlike the president for the country, a governor for the state, a mayor for the city or town, it is the township's responsibility to keep the residents safe. That's it.
Hello, PJ Sninger, 745 Ling Road, New Oxford. But I lived on Greenridge Road in Hamilton for 10 years, so I know all these problems go cause. But here's the thing, this warehouse will be great in Lancaster, not in town here. This is a rural area with tractors, for goodness sakes. How often do we go down 30 and there's tractors on the road? Every day, so this is not made for this area. Lancaster, yes, not here. Hopefully you guys see that, and don't put this through. This is not rural America. This is made for a city, and we're not a freaking city.
My name's Diana French, and I'm at 4 Faith Drive. I live at Cross Keys Development, and I'm very concerned about emissions if this warehouse goes in, because the diesel has chemicals like benzene, arsenic, and nitric oxides, which, when they form with heat and sunlight, causes smog. And we have diesel death zones around the country where the nitrous oxides can damage your lung tissue, lower the body's resistance to respiratory infection, increase risk of lung cancer, asthma, heart disease, and premature death. So I'm very concerned about that because we're close and that many trucks is going to be a lot of pollution.
I'm little. My name is Betty Swan, and I live at 350 Forest Drive. The lady just before me was speaking about smog. We don't have it here. I lived in LA. I don't want it here. I came to talk to you because on Forest Drive, as on many of the smaller roads around, it's not a flat road. There are lots of little hills. When I try to come out my drive, whether I'm going to 94 and having a problem turning left or right, or I'm going out to Woods Road to get onto 30, going left or right, I cannot see traffic coming toward me. If I'm going out my drive, I can't see who's coming from the left because there's a hill. If I'm going to the right, I can't see who's coming toward me because there's a hill. And nobody stays on their side of the road because the road is so narrow. My personal observations of having lived here only 5 years. But I've lived lots of other places where these kinds of operations come in, and the roads as they normally are not changed to accommodate that. They might make changes at an intersection, but the actual roads, they don't change. So it makes it really tough for those that live on those roads. And our road is always used now as a shortcut. I don't want tractor trailers coming down my road, coming over those hills. It's just not going to work. Thank you.
April Swope, 601 Hanover Street. Those of you that have lived here long enough, about 10 years ago, there was a police officer that was responding to a situation. I think he was following somebody that was speeding. Anyway, tractor trailer hit him. Fortunately, praise God, he did live. So that's just one incident right there at that intersection. I live across from Brickyard Road, and we have had our house hit 3 times already since 2007, just like maybe within the last week or 10 days, there was a accident up at Irishtown Road, and the Irishtown came and directed traffic across from our house. And he's out there with, the 2 flashlights or whatever, and he's pulling a tractor trailer out onto Hanover Street off of Brickyard Road. And a person came over the hill and hit the tractor trailer. Anybody that's in our area knows that when you have a situation on 30, the traffic comes down our road and tries to bypass traffic. And traffic's a mess there anyway. Also, like 8 million children disappear every year. And I pray to God that this facility will not be used for sex trafficking for our children. So that's another thought you can think about. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Deborah Missouri. I live at 46 Summer Lane in New Oxford, Hampton Township. My house faces 94 off of 700 Road and 94, right at that intersection. The rear of it faces that. I'm coming to you to bring to your attention the fact that we have, with the community growing and houses being put in, we have a growing number of people who actually walk 94 Pine Run Road to get to work. And a lot of them are younger people who do not have cars. Maybe I have seen one child who missed the bus going to school. He had to walk down Pine Run, cross over 94 to get up to Berlin Road so he could get to school. So the one thing that I want you to be aware of is we do have a growing number of walkers that actually walk these streets, and the influx of trucks, added traffic of that nature would also harm or cause death possible to these people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Garrett Hostler. I'm down from the very terrible roundabout off from Hampton there, 3490 Hunterstown Hampton Road. I want to cut to the chase. Who's deciding this, and when will it be decided? How is it going to be decided? Do we have any say at all? Who decides this? I mean, I don't.
These 3 guys decided.
You guys decided. You have been the most quiet people in the world. You have so many chances for input, and you haven't had any input here. I'm not angry. I don't know you guys. You might be awesome guys, but there's no input from this. 5 times they've been asked. Nobody says anything. I'd like to see you say something once in a while, I guess, because like he said, there's a bunch of angry people here. But there's 8 billion stories like this, and it's going on across America. And it just feels like we don't have a voice, and it's going to be big money. It's going to overtake this whole thing. So get ready for your emission stickers. I hope you guys have a fund for us to pay for our emission stickers and all these small mechanics that are going to have to get their emission sticker machines and software every year to take care of this, because it's coming, because the pollution is going to overtake all this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
My name is David Shank, 2620 Carlisle Pike, Oxford Township. I live at the top of Red Hill Road where Red Hill comes out on Carlisle Pike. I'm an owner-operator in a trucking company. I'm a first responder at United Hook and Ladder. There's a number of things I can reiterate about what was discussed about tonight. One thing I think you guys don't realize, you have no truck services in Cross Keys for these guys that are driving these trucks. You will take your children into Sheetz and see guys taking showers in the sinks in Sheetz restroom. They will be brushing their teeth in the sinks in Sheetz restrooms. Okay, you don't have the services here for it. They're going to be parking there. They're going to be waiting to get their loads. They're going to be out of hours, and they're not going to have anywhere to go. You know, the accidents, the traffic. You know, another thing I don't understand is I've been to every meeting except for the last one because I was out of town. These gentlemen submitted an application. If I'd submit an application and put a building on my property and I don't have my permits right or my electrical planning right or any of that, the township would hand that application back to me and say, sorry, Mr. Shank, try again. These guys have sat here and lied to you, the public, about everything they've proposed, and you guys just keep giving them time and opportunity to fix it, from sales agreements to lighting permits, on and on and on, and you're wasting people's time. I don't get it. Deny the application, turn it around, send them back to the drawing board, and tell them to try again.
Hi, my name is Angie Perino, and I'm on the 620 Mount Misery Road. I frequent Brickyard Road to come into Cross Keys. Before you even propose this, the traffic, there are things all the time. We even use that way to go to Philadelphia or to go to Harrisburg or Hampton. They're talking about Hampton. That's a nightmare around the circle. But my husband is a truck driver. He's been a truck driver for a lot of years. I know the etiquette for truck drivers, which you're supposed to give to them, and the light thing and let them go. But I also know the other end of it, too, when you're driving the road and you're doing the speed limit and they're on your butt. I also know that 94 further down, even from Cross Keys, is a nightmare. I was at the Jean Latta Ford for something last week. I couldn't get out on that road for at least 10 minutes either way. And when I did, it was taking my life into my own hands because those cars don't go slow. Tractor trailers normally don't go slow. But the thing I have to say is, have you considered, I'm not a real angry person. I'm more logical, but I'm also not motivated by greed. And what I see is greed. And to come into a community where somebody may have thought, these dumb farmers don't, nothing's going to happen. These people are dumb farmers. And refer to them that. They're smart people. They're people that care. They're people that put a lot of effort into the areas that they live in. I love my township. I love living in New Oxford. I hate the traffic because I lived in the city before that. Now, the other thing I'm talking about is when a vehicle, tractor trailer, comes out of that warehouse building, whether it's going left or going right, you're not going to get, it's hard enough when you have a car. When you have a tractor trailer, you're going to be going over the line. You're going to be blocking traffic in both ways so that you can get, somebody stops so you can make the turn and get out of there. I think it's dangerous. I think it's uncalled for, and I do think there are 1,000 other places you can build that warehouse. But my friend did some research and found out in the 3 Adams County and 2 other counties that there are warehouses, most of them are where they probably really should be, and not in the middle of towns and neighborhoods. And I have friends that I have that live on 94, and they're not happy about it either. I also know friends who lived on Hershey Heights when they put in just the car dealerships. And we would be there over there having a picnic and outside, they had a pool, and you would hear Joe, line 4, Jack, line 4, and they would be in their house. They eventually sold their beautiful home, and they moved away because they couldn't take it all those hours in one day. I ask that you think about those tractor trailers because they're bigger than cars, and getting out on that road now is not so easy from whatever business you're going to. So it's not going to take up one lane, a half a lane. It's going to stop traffic in both directions, no matter how you fix it. Thank you.
Jeff Seibert,
Forest Drive. I provided testimony before about the impact and the value of my property. I just want to thank Attorney Wolf and the Foxes for organizing the objectors. The attorney really pointed out that we could have been really taken advantage of by some folks that didn't necessarily do their homework correctly, and I certainly didn't understand and appreciate all that was at risk here. But I really wanted to say that I'm concerned about the township's position here, that they can condition this thing to a point where it might make sense. I don't think you can compromise the health welfare of our community with conditions. If you put lipstick on a pig, it's still pig.
I live in 20 LaBelle Road in Hamilton Township. My name is Lori Stevens. Bottom line is, I have nothing against with the applicants. This is not the location you want to build the mega warehouse. That's just the bottom line. And the fact is, I'd be happy if you could find someone a better place. We will be supportive of that. It's just this community, it's not the place to be able to handle the kind of project you're doing, because the impact it's going to do to our community, it's not something that comprehensible, that it's so easy to put something out there and not thinking the implication, the ramification, what we're going to have to deal. We live here. We live here, and so are you. So think about the implication. Look, if you could find another place, I'll be the first one. We'll be cheering for you. Let's do it. It's just the wrong location. That's all I have to say. And thank you for everybody.
Hi, I'm Donna Croner. I live at 1111 Elizabethtown Drive at the Cross Keys Village. And I've been here 5 years, and I love this small little town, this rural town, this beautiful little community that we don't have traffic that is so bad that you can't cross the street, but it's getting there. It's really getting there. I walk my dog, and and I heard that comment too about only three accidents, because I went, what? 3 accidents a month, so, or a minimum of 3 accidents a month. So the big point is they did that study, and they didn't even do it at peak time. We got Gettysburg 10 miles down the road. Brings in 100,000 people a year. Added to how many cars and tractor trailers? It's not for this community. This community needs to stay the way it is. We love our neighbors, we love each other, and we don't need a big complex like that interfering in our lives. Take it where it can fit, not here. Thank you.
Good evening, Melanie Souter, 46 Springfield Drive in Hamilton Township. I just wanted to say real briefly that I think we're overlooking the most obvious issue here. We've been talking about traffic all night. The gentleman pointed out that he did not agree with the PennDOT report, and I would have to agree with him just from observation. I live directly on 94, and in both directions, there are blind spots the entire way. There is absolutely no way that we're talking about a traffic study at one intersection. Have we looked in any direction from there? Route 30 to the east may be able to handle the traffic. Going 94 north where I live, there is absolutely no way that adding 5 more tractor trailers makes sense, let alone 500 or over 1,000. So, thank you.
Anybody else?
Dan Devaney, I used to live on Forest Drive, and I left because the traffic was too much. My mother pulled out, was driving on 94 North, and somebody T-boned her coming out of Pine Run Road, 2 collapsed lungs. Person I sold my house to, their daughter was a senior at the high school. She pulled out and got a broken neck out of Pine Run Road. And my sister was coming south on 94 and had to wait for a couple of vehicles turning left on Forest Drive. Pickup truck in back of her got run into, flew up in the air, and when it came down, the hitch went into the road, and her car was severely damaged. I just wanted to let you know there are a ton of accidents. And I, too, did hear the 3 reportable accidents reported. I think it was the June hearing.
I'm Bonnie Kuntz. I live at 92 Peace Circle in Cross Keys Village. I just have a short thought. There are a lot of Amish moving into our area now, horses and buggies, and that just might be something to take into consideration.
I know I already spoke, Chelsea Ross, 46 Woods Road. Just something that has been said a lot tonight is, so you're saying this is an existing problem, so you're saying this is, yeah, they're all existing problems, but if this warehouse is not bringing anything positive to our community, in which it's not, it's pollution and more traffic and everything, then why are we still here? That's it.
My name's Carly Lair. I live at 121 Pine Run Road. I'm sure you've heard a lot about traffic, and I'll emphasize that. It's my son, Brody. He's 16. He just got his learner's permit. And my biggest concern is pulling out of Pine Run Road and making a left on 94. It's bad enough now. I can't imagine with more tractor trailers. My biggest issue in pulling out there is the tractor trailers that go way too fast through that area, even though there's the blinking light that says that the speed limit is a lot lower. They don't follow it. So that is my biggest concern and what I wanted to voice tonight.
Anyone else? Last call. Okay, thank you for your public comment. Sure. So as I was saying before, what we're going to do is we're going to recess this hearing. Applicant still understands that they've waived time limits as a condition of letting you guys submit your revised application. So that's still on the record, right?
To a certain extent, yes.
Well, I mean, to allow us time to deliberate.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's pick a date sooner than later. I just would need an opportunity in between to have the executive session with my board so we can coordinate all this and make the proper decision. So what's something towards the end of the month?
Why don't we go into December?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 4th of Wednesdays are good here, right? This building. It's Wednesday, we get this. I think
Wednesday they're not, right?
What are the dates we get this building? Well, it depends on what date we pick.
Yeah.
Can't be a Wednesday.
December's really full.
For the
Mr. Bransky, you're looking for a decision, a vote date, and then working backwards, and then. All right. What we're trying to do is figure out the logistics for the board to be able to vote. They're going to come back and vote after they deliberate privately, which is permitted under the municipality's planning code. So we're trying to find a date for that vote to take place, that the room's available. And so if you guys can just be patient for a few more minutes, that's what we're working on. Mr. Bransky, you want to go off the record for this part of it, or?
Yeah.
Thanks, Bill, for that. Remember, we deal with it every day. They don't. And everybody's tired. So thank you.
Tuesday.
Thank you. You say Tuesday the 10th, Mr. Bransky.
Works for me. They don't
We're good.
matter. I'm
Yeah.
good.
Wait,
Like the only day in December.
Yep.
Okay.
Tuesday, the 10th, 6 o'clock, we will reconvene, and the board will make the decision at that time. In between there, we'll have an executive session for legal advice.
When would you like proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law? And I think, is
Do you
it
need them
20
more than a week in advance?
when's Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving is the 28th.
28th?
So by the 3rd, close of business on the 23rd to be able to submit our proposed findings to you, Mr. Bransky.
The 3rd?
Yeah, a week in advance of the meeting. Is
Yep.
that sufficient?
Yep.
Okay, December 3rd.
Findings of fact and conclusions of law to me via email no later than the close of business on December 3rd.
And what time do you leave the office?
6. All right.
You can expect mine at 5:58.
So we are recessed until the December.
John, when we transmit proposed findings to you electronically, are we copying counsel?
Yes.
Or are you going to distribute to all?
No, make sure you include all opposing counsel in your distributions. to
Very
me.
good, will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank you,
thanks.
board members, for your patience.